Good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session for Tuesday, June 29th, 2021. It's 9:03 a.m. My name is Ty Mentor, Chair of the Board. To my left is the Vice Chair, Commissioner Gary Edwards, and to his left is our County Manager, Mayor Chavez. The public can follow along on our Thurston County YouTube channel. And with that, we'll just jump right in. Item 1 is our COVID-19 update for this week. BoCC Director of Public Health, Shelley Slaughter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today is day 510 of Thurston County's COVID emergency response. To date in Washington State, there have been 450,930 cases of COVID-19 and 5,911 Washingtonians that have lost their lives. Here in Thurston County, we are at 11,016 confirmed cases, with 143 new cases occurring in this last week. That puts us at 97.9 on the governor's risk assessment dashboard over the last 2 weeks. 110 of our Thurston County residents have died, with another death occurring in this last week. 718 Thurston County residents have been hospitalized since this pandemic began, and 3 new hospitalizations occurred in this last week. Our hospital capacity remains stable, 89.2% fully occupied, 5% by COVID patients in the acute beds, and 4.8% of our ICU beds are occupied by COVID patients, which is an improvement. Our test positivity rate is 4.1%. We still have community transmission of COVID here in our community and encourage people to get tested at one of our community-based testing locations, which today is at Roof from 10 to 1 in Rochester, at Lacey Union Gospel Mission and Evergreen State College the rest of this week. Check out our website if you're interested in getting tested because you have symptoms or may have been exposed to someone. We have had 62 congregate care outbreaks to date, with 4 that our outbreak team are currently investigating. In terms of vaccinations, 283,956 doses have been administered by Thurston County vaccine providers since we began giving vaccines in our county. 51.5% of our total population, which includes kids who are not yet eligible under age 12, have initiated at least 1 dose of a COVID vaccine series. 46.8% of our total population is fully vaccinated. 61.4% of 16 and over have initiated vaccines. You'll remember that our goal by tomorrow is 70%
Shelley,
statewide. Yes,
can I stop you right there? The numbers were coming too fast. Can you go back to I got 46.8 of total population fully vaccinated, then you were going into the over 16. Start there.
Yes, sir. So for Thurston County residents age 16 and older that have initiated at least 1 dose, we are at 61.4%. So Thurston County is falling short of our governor's goal to reach 70%. However, I expect the state will be making an announcement about statewide progress today. 56.2% of age 16 and older is fully vaccinated, and 60% of people 12 and older have initiated at least 1 dose of COVID vaccine. We do have vaccines widely available in our community. Our community-based and mobile vaccine team has been very busy over the last couple of weeks. We did have to, unfortunately, cancel our last clinic that was scheduled at South Puget Sound Community College drive-through this Sunday due to excessive heat. We do have our mall storefront located next to Buckle offering vaccines 7 days a week. So encourage people to check that out if they would like to get a COVID vaccine. And this last week, We have offered vaccines at Salish Middle School, Rochester High School, the Lacey Food Bank, DSHS in Tumwater. And this week and next week, we will be at YMCA Plum Street and Briggs. We will be continuing to work on our homebound vaccines, and we'll also be at the Olympia Farmers Market in addition to our other, our mall site and others. So encourage people to please get vaccinated. As COVID restrictions lift and we reach this very important milestone in the pandemic, I encourage people to please keep in mind that over half of our population is not yet fully vaccinated. So please protect your kids, socialize responsibly as we head into this 4th of July weekend. We do have variants of concern circulating in our community, and our health officer, Dr. Abdimalik, is here to tell you a little more about that. Dr. A.
Good morning, commissioners. We are seeing a gradual decline in overall community transmission rates of COVID-19 here in Thurston County. Today, our transmission rate on the governor's dashboard was 97.9 cases per 100,000 over the past 14 days. We are seeing, variants of concern circulating in our county. On the most recent, in our most recent report and roundup of these variants of concern, we did find one case from which the Delta variant was sequenced, and that was the first case that we've had in our county. Additionally, to date, we've had 91 cases of the B117 variant, which also known as the UK variant, 4 cases of the B1351 variant, which was initially identified in South Africa, 5 cases of the P1 variant, originally identified in Brazil, 5 cases of the 1427 variant, and 24 cases of the 1429 variant. Both of those were originally identified in California. So our surveillance continues. As far as the Delta variant goes, it is more transmissible than other variants, and we're seeing an increased percentage of sequenced samples carrying this variant. I know that in the U.S. we're looking at over 20% of new cases. We do know that the Delta variant is more transmissible, and we are still learning about what its impact is on disease severity. So I am urging Thurston County residents to be cautious, especially going into this 4th of July weekend. I would like to echo Director Slaughter. I continue to recommend wearing masks in indoor public spaces where vaccination status cannot be confirmed, as well as maintaining distance, just as a good precaution against spread. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes. My first question is in regards to the Delta variant. You said it was more transmissible. What age groups is it affecting right now, or what age groups does it affect more?
So in terms of where we're seeing transmission, it continues to be in younger age groups that are less vaccinated. In terms of risk, we're still learning about where the risk of severe illness is. However, I would anticipate that it would follow the same patterns: folks with comorbidities, folks with advanced age. I would anticipate that they would be at higher risk for severe disease and outcomes. But once again, we are still. This is a rapidly transmissible variant, and we are still learning a lot about its particulars.
Is it highly transmissible with vaccinated people?
So I did look at I would like to take a little bit of a step back and talk a little bit about vaccine breakthrough cases, if that's okay, Commissioner.
Yes.
Thank you. So far in Washington State, we've had 2,228 documented vaccine breakthrough cases. Given the millions of doses of vaccine that have been given here in Washington State, this is a very small number, and because even though our vaccines are incredibly effective, so 94% with Moderna, 95% with Pfizer, and 72% in the U.S. With Janssen. We do anticipate some breakthrough cases. What we're looking at with so all of this is expected, and the vaccines are performing well, and all of the available vaccines have shown protective effects, including against the Delta variant. We're still waiting on final data from Moderna, but the CDC has seen some data from Pfizer and Janssen. That's reassuring in that regard. In terms of what the breakthrough rate is, so for that time period where they were looking at these vaccine breakthroughs, the Delta variant represented about 2% of overall sequenced variants sequenced from samples here in the state, and represented about 3% of the vaccine breakthroughs during that time period. So because sequencing does take time, 7 to 10 days, there is a bit of a lag in terms of matching this data.
Thank you.
Is there anything new on the length of time the antigen exists in the blood from those that are vaccinated or those that have recovered? Anything new on that?
Anything new about the length of, about the duration?
Yes, about how long you're protected, so to speak.
Oh, yes. So that's an area where we're still learning. Where we're still learning a lot. The University of Washington. Yes, I was just reading a study this morning about how looking at germinal centers, which had signs of persistent immune response to COVID-19 after vaccination. This sets the stage for us for the vaccines that we have available to be effective for a much longer period of time than initially thought. Although so the variants are a wild card, and we're still learning exactly what that timeline may be. This study represents a different look at how long that protection may last, because instead of just looking at levels of antibodies, they're looking at the centers where our immune system maintains its memory of past pathogens. So I'm very hopeful that the vaccines that we currently have available will remain effective for a longer period of time.
Maybe for Shelley. Shelley, you gave quite a number that our staff has given since we've had the ability to give that vaccination. Does that number include the private vendors that are providing, the different drugstores and chain stores, that type of thing?
Yes, that 283,956 doses administered is by all Thurston County vaccine providers, including Thurston County Public Health and Social Services. And We just recently passed the milestone of administering our 50,000th dose by Thurston County Public Health, and we are the largest vaccine provider in our community. But it does include all the data that I share with you includes vaccines administered by all different types of providers, including our pharmacies and our federal pharmacy partners.
So that 280 some thousand, it doesn't seem like it jives with the percentage that you give about those folks that at least have started the process. I mean, we've only got about 300,000 people that live in Thurston County. I'm just trying to figure out what that discrepancy is.
That 283,000 number is the number of doses administered, which includes single dose vaccine series such as Johnson & Johnson, as well as the 2-dose vaccines of Moderna and Pfizer. So that number does not represent the number of people or correlate with the number of Thurston County residents. That is strictly the number of doses administered.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, County Manager.
Maybe just additional information. Tomorrow, Shelley, we're going to be hosting a forum with the local nonprofits. You are going to be participating as to how the local nonprofits can help us to reach out to some of their those groups to extend our vaccination efforts. So just for the members of the public, that is also an effort we're going through tomorrow, and I believe Commissioner Mejia is going to participate on that. And also maybe shifting gears, Commissioner, if I may, for Shelley to provide a quick update or report. Last week, we closed the Pennydale Park for swimming due to the presence of fecal coliform. Can you provide a brief perspective as to the source, if you know of that fecal coliform?
Thank you so much, County Manager Chavez. I've invited Art Starry here to provide you an update on that. And I see that Art is on the screen. Art, are you able to join us to provide your perspective on this?
Good morning. So I'm Art Starry, as folks have indicated, the Environmental Health Director, and you're asking a bit about what happened at the lake. So what happened is, as you know, well, actually a couple of years ago, we started sampling Pennydale Park regularly. That was started when the board actually authorized some special funding for that program. So we thank you very much for that. So over the course of the summer, we go out and sample weekly to determine if water quality is sufficient for allowing recreational swimming. And this past week, the sampling results showed to be quite high on 4 of the 6 samples that we took. And so that resulted in us posting the lake, or asking public Parks and Rec, excuse me, I know they're part of Public Works, but Parks and Rec to put a warning sign up advising people that the water quality was poor and suggesting that they not swim. So typically what would happen then is the beach would be closed until we could do additional sampling, and that's in fact what happened. But because of the warm weather and because we wanted to see if conditions had improved, we went out and sampled again on Thursday and again on Friday to determine if the water quality had changed. And the good news was that the samples that we took on Thursday showed dramatic improvement as far as water quality is concerned, dropping from in the neighborhood of 1,000 fecal coliform bacteria per 100 ml, or about 4 ounces of water, down to sometimes below detection limits. And in other cases, the highest sample was around 35. And then on Friday, we went and sampled again and got similar results. And our policy is that to reopen a beach, you need to either be able to identify the specific reason why there was a problem. So if, say there's a broken pipe or something, and you could say, oh, we fixed the pipe and we sampled it and the water quality is improved, then you could reopen the beach with one sampling set. But in this case, because we didn't know exactly what the problem was, our policy says that we have to do 2 sets of samples. And so that's what happened in this case. And so we took 2 sets of samples. They both came back on 2 separate days, 2 consecutive days. In this case, they both came back good. And so then we recommended that the beach be reopened. And so I consulted with Dr. Abdul Malik. We reviewed our policies and agreed that it would be appropriate to remove the warning.
And the source of that fecal coliform is unknown.
It's unknown. And this one, the land use around the park, there's a church camp and church properties just to the north. There's a single family residence to the south. The residence is actually quite a ways from the beach itself. There's no unusual activity that we could find that took place. There's a small tributary that drains near actually goes through the park and drains into the lake. Sometimes in the past that has had high fecal coliform levels, but in this case they were really, really low. So that was surprising. We do know that the day before the first set of samples were taken, we had a kind of a strong westerly wind. We don't know if maybe something was blown in there, but our staff are really well trained to be discerning about where they sample so as to not pick up a clump of debris or anything that looks as though it would be a contaminant. And so it was surprising to have those high levels, especially on multiple sampling, I'll say sites, but we sample at 4 different locations at that beach, and we use the same rough locations every time, and so to have 2 of them quite very high and 2 of them moderately high was surprising.
We do routinely sample at Pennydale during the summer months, and it is currently safe for use.
Yeah.
The fecal chloroform that shows up, that comes from any warm-blooded animal? Is that right?
It comes from, warm-blooded animals. So it could be humans, it could be dogs, it could be birds. There's a lot of different things that could cause that.
I guess we get a lot of complaint about lots of geese and stuff hanging around the docks and around the shore. Is that a possibility?
I suppose it's a possibility, but when I was there, I actually did the sampling on Friday. It's a very nice, clean park. It's well maintained. There wasn't evidence of a lot of bird activity. I've been at other sampling events or other sampling sites where you can see there's bird debris and stuff on the dock. There wasn't anything like that. Again, there's always that possibility that there's some bird or something that was there shortly before our staff got there, and they just happened to pick up a bad sample. But again, the more perplexing part for me is that it was a couple of different spots. So it wasn't one sample 5 feet away from the other. It was sample several feet apart, in the neighborhood of like 50 feet apart. So that's the confusing part. And so we are going to continue to investigate to see if this is just an anomaly or if there's something more to it. But at this stage, again, we believe the water quality is improved, and it's over the course of a couple of days and several samples. And so we were satisfied that it was appropriate to lift the warning.
Okay, thank you.
Art, when you say that to go from 1,000, whatever it is, down to 35 or below detection limits, is that, do you get readings in between those two typically? From time to time? It just seems to be, that's a massive order of magnitude. So I'm just wondering, is there a continuum that you see over your samples over time, or was this 1,000 just out of absolutely nowhere? It's usually below detectable limits, or 35, and you got these 2 readings of 1,000, or is there sometimes 500 and sometimes 200 and et cetera?
We would expect it to be below 100, and the recreational standard for water contact is 100 fecal coliform or less per 100 ml, and typically that's what we would see, is something less than 100. It might be 35, it might be 60, but if it's below 100, that's considered to be, again, acceptable for human contact, water contact recreation, and pretty consistently that's what we've got. So for instance, last year we didn't make any recommendations to close the park because of fecal coliform problems. We did have a water clarity problem at one point. where, as you're familiar, Black Lake and the others can have algae blooms. So sometimes the water's just not very clear, and so that's unsafe for swimming. And that's why there was a restriction, as I recall, last year, but there wasn't a fecal coliform or a closure because of poor water quality. It was the water clarity. So normally that's what we would expect. So this was, unusual and certainly a cause for concern. So we, acted and recommended that the beach posted the warning at that time. But again, the standard is 100.
Perfect, thank you. And when you say it's unusual, is it unusual for that location, like around Pennydale, or is that unusual for Black Lake overall?
So we don't have a body of information about Black Lake. There are one sampling area is Pennydale Park, because that's, again, a county facility and we wanted to be cautious there. So I can't tell you for sure what water quality is around the rest of the lake. But we're not aware of, when we've done other sampling for different purposes, in response to complaints or something like that, we haven't seen high numbers.
Commissioner Edwards has something else.
I guess just as a point of interest, I live out on Lawrence Lake, and it's very common to see a large flock of geese often that will be there early in the morning, and as soon as people start showing up, then they're gone right away. And I don't know, I mean, I would guess that could be a problem, and why nobody sees them there is they do show up oftentimes early in the morning, and then as soon as people show up, they're gone. So I know there's a big population of Canadian geese out there on Black Lake, so just a point of interest.
So in the Pennydale Park is open for swimming, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I took the signs down Saturday.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Art. Thank you,
Well, thank
Shelley.
you.
Thank you, Dr. A.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 2 this morning, homeless strategies update, and there's Keely Marino.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Services. All right, really quickly on the rental assistance front, an update. So far, Community Action Council since April has served 684 households. There are nearly 600 other applications that are in process, which means that they have met with those households and begun the process of getting paperwork initiated or finalized, and then engaging with the landlords and cutting a check. And then there are 782 appointments in queue. So households that have not yet met with a caseworker. They've paid out $4.4 million in rental assistance and about $147,000 in utility assistance. CYS, again, this is just for community youth services, youth and young adults between the ages of 18 and 24. So it's a much smaller population. So far, they've served 38 households of youth and young adults. They've got 66 in process. And then 56 appointments in queue. So they've paid out over $373,000 in rent assistance and only about $1,400 in utility assistance. So those are the numbers with regards to the rental assistance programs that we have going here in Thurston County. Moving on, just want to give you an update about how the hazardous weather event played out over the weekend. On Wednesday of last week, Dr. Abdulmalik, Public Health Officer, and Director Shelley Slaughter of Public Health declared a hazardous weather event officially to be running from noon on Friday through noon today on Tuesday. In the days leading up to the extreme heat, the Hazardous Weather Task Force initiated all planning to ensure that we had a response that was appropriate for the need. So we did work really closely with the City of Olympia and with our contracted agencies, so Interfaith Works and Partners in Prevention Education, to stand up a pop-up cooling center down in downtown Olympia. We also made sure that the outreach efforts through our shelter-in-place provider, which is Partners in Prevention Education, were getting out into the encampments and delivering water, sunscreen, and other survival gear over the hot days. I will say that the amount of community interest and participation in donations and in delivering water out into the encampments was amazing. Our community certainly demonstrates its level of compassion when these really stressful events do happen. We have mountains of water still ready to go out into the encampments over the rest of the summer. We had City of Olympia staff and all of the outreach efforts going throughout the day, every day, providing water to folks living outside. In the cooling center that was running from 12 to 6 p.m. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, we served over 314 people. Yesterday alone, I was working all day, and we saw 161 people come through the cooling center. And we had 2 people who had already entered into some level of heat exhaustion, if not heat stroke, and were sent to St. Pete's. So literally saving lives through this cooling center yesterday. So I'm very grateful for our community, for Partners in Prevention Education, for Interfaith Work, City of Olympia, and Capital Recovery Center, all of which provided staffing or all volunteers throughout. We had nurses on staff yesterday. So we had a volunteer nurse from Olympia Free Clinic and another nurse that came in to provide wound care and also to take vitals when people were showing signs of heat distress. This just really clearly indicates to me that the lack of having a day center in our community is a health hazard for those who are living unhoused. As of March of 2020, at the onset of the COVID-19 response, the community care center closed down. And that center was providing vital, like just hygiene and safety in terms of just getting out of the elements to, on an average, 250 individuals per day. So we don't have that right now. We don't have, unless it's an extreme situation like over the last 3 days, we don't have currently any place for individuals who are living outside to get out of the elements. One gentleman was found just exposed in complete, out in the sun and just lying outside, unresponsive, and fire was called, and that person was brought to the cooling center. And because we had nurses on staff to take vitals, that was one of the folks that ended up going to St. Pete's Emergency. So just really appreciate the Hazardous Weather Task Force, its efforts, and just really feeling that need to have a place for people to go inside on a daily basis. And that's my report.
Thank you. No questions for me.
No, sir.
Keely, starting with that day center, can you update me? I remember it's almost been a year, but it was a conversation I had with the director at Interfaith Works, and they had a project that they were trying to create support and it was going to do 2 or 3 different things, but part of what it was going to do is address the day center gap that you just described. Is that still a project that's going forward, or?
Yes, that is Interfaith Works project to create a temporary shelter while we wait for 2828 to finalize being constructed and getting up and running.
Yep.
The intent is after that project has completed, then that it's called a sprung-built structure, a really big and sturdy tent-like structure, semi-permanent, and that will become a day center following 2828 Martin Way's opening.
So right now it's there, but it's being used in a different way or it's not there?
It is not there yet. There have been some delays with some of the processes to get the current building that's on site demolished and to construct the sprung-built structure. The hope is by August it will be fully built and operational.
Okay. And then going back to the beginning of your report, you mentioned the Community Action Council and the applications for the rent assistance. And there've been a couple of meetings where we've discussed this. I don't even remember where. I mean, I think it was in the Three Cities meeting a couple of weeks ago where we discussed how to help the flow of applications get processed so that the money gets out. So when you say, you gave a number like X number of dollars, I wanted to say 4.8 or something had been dispersed. Is that what you said?
4.4.
4.4 has been dispersed. And then you've got 782 appointments. How much money is needing to be dispersed? If you have that handy.
Good question. Do you mean in total? How many funds do we have available for rental assistance?
I
Or do you
mean,
mean
all of the money that would be slated to flow through the Community Action Council from whatever source.
I see Tom is on here, and if I get this wrong, I invite you to pop on, Tom, but I believe it's upwards of 25 million that we have available. But those funds are intended to not be distributed all at one time, but over the next year or two. Do I have that right, Tom? There you are.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Webster. So just to piggyback on that, yeah, so we have right now about 18 million in contracts with Community Action Council. And as Keely said, that is intended to be spent kind of over the next year or so. The county has received an additional 6 million from the Department of Treasury under the American Rescue Plan Act that we've not yet contracted out, and additional money that we are expecting from the Department of Commerce as well. So right now we have about 18 million in contracts with Community Action Council.
And we have, I'll go to county manager, just, I guess the state bridged a little bit further on, in terms of the they're trying to balance eviction policy with rental assistance, with economic situation, and my understanding is they extended that a touch, but we still have.
It changed based on what you call the bridge.
Yeah, the bridge.
Yeah, if I may, also related to the Community Action Council, we have seen a little bit of backlog, how to going to be reaching out to those who have already applied. So there is a little bit of a backlog, and staff is working with Community Action Council as to how they can ramp up their processing of the applications. But also on the sidelines, considering what Tom just said, we're going to be receiving a lot more money. And considering the backlog the Community Action Council has, we're in the process of seeing what other organization can provide the same services. We can start spreading more of those services to those in need. And if we couple with the bridge now the governor has put in place, I think it's essential for us as a county to look for another option, another provider that we can help the citizens in need, because as soon as the bridge is over, I believe we're going to be facing a lot of backlog as well as a lot of need. So we're working on that with Tom, Keely, and Jenica, I believe. So as soon as we have something in more tangible, we'll bring this to the board. And that is why at this point we have not bring for consideration the additional funding to the board to allocate for CAC until we'll have a larger perspective as to how we're going to be able to distribute those new dollars.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Keely. Thanks, Tom. Okay. Then next is to review the BoCC draft agenda for this afternoon's meeting. Starting at 2 p.m., we'll call the meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Commissioner Mejia. We'll consider the agenda and approval, as well as board meeting minutes from June 22nd, last week's meeting. Opportunity for the public to address the board, followed by county manager's update.
Yeah, Commissioners, I would assume that you will receive some additional public testimony related to a couple of items that you have on your agenda today, related to amending the capital facilities plan, as well as the budget amendment that you will be considering this afternoon. Last week you received several testimonies related to those items, and at this point there is nothing we need to follow up on that.
Okay, consent items are A through D. Item 3A is emergency services. Resolutions for the updated comprehensive emergency management plan.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a follow-up to the briefing to the board on May 26, 2021, where Emergency Services provided you a perspective that it's time for us to update the Thurston County Comprehensive Emergency Plan, and this is related to RCW 32.52. The last time this particular plan was approved by the board was in 2015, and it's timely for the board to consider updating this particular plan. Kurt Harding is here, our Emergency Services Director. If you have any questions specific to this item.
Questions for Kurt? Commissioner Mejia?
No.
No, sir.
Me neither, thank you. Let's go to item, thanks Kurt. We'll go to item 3B. Human Resources Collective Bargaining Agreement with the Local 618 Court Security.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, Commissioners, and this is for you to consider ratifying the contract agreement with Local 618, the Court Security. And this is a brand new bargaining unit, and this is their first contract. And the contract is currently for your consideration to reaffirm is from July 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2022. And those dates will align related to the many other contracts we're going to be negotiating next year. You asked a couple of questions last week related to this particular contract, related to wages, I believe. So let me read you what that entails. But I'll be more than happy to give you the 74-page contract. But I believe the question was what, in terms of the wages, Section 8.1, and is a couple of items. Effective July 1st, 2021, Court Security officers moved to a modified range 7 within the current classification, which is moving ranges. And the Court Security Supervisor will move to range 9, a little bit higher. And that is stated on the current salary charts that we have in the county. Also effective January 1st, 2022, the salary rates set forth for the 2020, or the ones that were set in 2021, will be 2.5% adjustment on those job classifications that was negotiated for 2022. And the last item on the wage schedule during the term of this agreement, extra help employees will be compensated based on the step 1 of range 7. So they do have, as you may recall, Superior Court has a couple temporary employees who help manage the needs on court security. And this really makes a little bit more structure as to how the extra help employees will be compensated. The rest of the contract is as any other contract, speaks about sick leave, overtime, and medical leave, and medical benefits. So nothing out of the ordinary that I see based on the other contracts the board has already approved. Any questions?
No, sir, thank you.
No, sir.
Okay, item 3C is a Sheriff's Department item, Lake Lawrence Regatta application.
Yeah, for your consideration, this is a yearly request and has been in place for many, many years. And this is for you to consider approving an application for from the Seattle Outboard Association to hold a race event called the Regatta at the Lake Lawrence from September 17 through September 19, 2021. The Sheriff's Office has checked all the boxes and they're requesting for you to consider approval of this application.
No questions.
No, sir.
No, we're good to go there. Auditor Financial Services Voucher List. Any questions from the board?
No, sir.
Okay, then we'll go to item 4A, Resolution for 2021 Revised Indirect Cost Allocation Plan.
Commissioner, you also reviewed this this item last week, and this is related to associated with the budget amendment that you might be considering approving this afternoon, and which aligns some of the actions you may take related to the 2001 indirect cost allocation plan. Last week, you had a few briefings related to the indirect cost for the 2022 budget, so that gives you a good perspective as to what this item is all about. And Robin is here to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions? No, sir.
I guess my only question would be, this is a step in the direction of being able to move forward on whether it be the atrium or the Mottman activity.
For the revised indirect costs?
Yeah, is there anything? in
Nothing
there
related to
connected?
those
Okay.
buildings or in this item.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
this is all about the ER&R adjustments.
Okay, 4B, resolution for interfund loan.
Also, I gave you a perspective last week related to this item. And this is related to the purchasing the Monument Plaza. The board has been involved in all the different steps in the decision-making process. The initial strategy behind that was for us to use real estate excise tax 1 to purchase this property. But the real estate excise tax 1 was related to the proposed option of bonding, and the board has authorized it in 2021 up to $50 million potential bonding. And that includes not just the purchasing of this particular piece of property for the auditor's office, but also includes all the upcoming many different projects that we need to upgrade the courthouse in terms of any upgrades, whether it's the space or just upgrade the infrastructure here at the courthouse. So with that in mind, then there is and Robert can speak a little bit more of this. When the board authorizes the bonding, there has to be expenditures needs to occur in a certain period of time. Because if we don't spend the money that we get from a general obligation bonds, we get into an arbitrage violations, meaning we cannot just hold the money in an account without having to spend it, meaning the purpose and intent of the bonding of general obligation bond. So it puts a little bit of a timing issue related to this, since we don't have the rest of the projects aligned for the potential $50 million bond. Then we need to make an investment at this point to purchase the property. And the proposal before you is to borrow from the ER&R funding to purchase the Monument property. And then as soon as the board approves, if that is the case, to the $50 million bond, then one of the first elements will be to reimburse the ER&R funding as a result of that. I just want to make clear the proposed $50 million bond is related and not to the 3000 Pacific, because the $50 million bond that we have available to you, I believe that needs to be put in place to address, regardless of the 3000 Pacific, the needs of the courthouse building, of the courthouse campus. And that was the intent of last year when the board approved as part of the budget. And this is just another tool for the board to start to address all the different needs associated with the courthouse campus. That's the larger story. So anything that I missed?
No, you did a great job. It's all about timing with the bond.
No questions.
Yes, this is part and parcel though with the joint issues of Mottman and 3000 Pacific though, is that right?
Well,
There's
you
a
know,
connection.
for instance, let's see, if the board makes a decision to move forward with 3000 Pacific, the $50 million bond will be used to upgrade this courthouse campus. If the board decides not to go with the 3000 Pacific, the same applies. So there is relation between everything related to space, but this is not tied directly to the 3000 Pacific, if I may.
But it's still tied with the,
It's absolutely
Mottman,
about Mottman.
sure,
It's
I mean,
about
it's
the
the
purchase
purchase
of Mottman.
price for
That's
Mottman.
right.
So, I mean, and the two are still connected, so
It's
they're
related,
all
yeah.
Also space.
It's all relative to my objection. Okay, thank you very much.
And you're objecting to Mottman's purchase.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but I am objecting to Mottman and 3,000.
What is the connection between the two?
Well, they're listed, they're gonna be in the same motion.
Item 3B has nothing to
That's
do
fine.
with the 3,000 Pacific. It's all about Mottman.
For
Right, yeah, but just because they're all connected and we're not, there's some question whether we followed the right process. The planning commission had some concerns. Are we gonna accept the planning commission's concerns for review or not? So I have concerns about the whole thing, that's all.
Okay, 4C, real estate brokerage services contract extension.
You also reviewed this item last week, commissioners. And this was, your consideration is to extend the current contract that will help Peter Matthews for another year, that will be from July 31st, 2021 through July 31st, 2022. When we reviewed this item last week, I provided to you some of the activities Peter Matthews and services they have provided to the county over the last few years. And you asked at that time, last week, how much we pay to Peter Matthews. So my brief response to that was a fee for service. Meaning we negotiate on the type of scope of work they need to provide because their activities and the services are broad in the spectrum. So depending as to what the county needs, then we engage them. And we negotiate a separate contracts and fees as to how we're gonna be exercising that. So for your, I did attach the initial contract with Peter Matthews back in 2016 and the subsequent amendments. The amendments, extend the time as stated on the contract. But in the contract, the initial contract, section 5 talks about compensation. And the compensation is related, as I stated, related to a fee for services where the county sees the need of any type of real estate brokerage, or any other services related to real estate. Then we engage Peter Matthews. We have a conversation in terms of the needs, and then provide a fee, and then we negotiate that contract, and that's how we have implemented in the past. So that's what I have for you based on the questions that you had last week, but certainly we're open to answer any additional questions you may have.
Anybody? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Is Peter Matthews representing solely the county? And I'll just use this, there's two separate issues they might be involved in. Are they involved in the 3,000 Pacific at all?
For the county, they're not involved, I believe. But I do know I believe they're providing services to the owner. Is that?
That's my understanding,
To the
that they were the
3,000
listing
but-
agent.
They're not representing the county on the.
And on the Mottman, they are representing the county and not the seller?
That's correct.
Is there any, is that unusual that they, on two different deals, they would be representing the seller on one and the county on the other?
Not at all. And in fact, our contract addresses that if there is another broker that's representing the buyer, their commission is 6%. If there's, if Kidder Matthews helps the county to find a buyer, the commission is 5%. And then in any other types of services or consulting other than real estate, so like the appraisal we have them do for us, that was at $250 an hour. I would also add that the process to secure Kidder Matthews in April of 2016 The board was approached by the then Director of Central Services, and in May approved an RFP. We received 5 bids from realtors. Kidder Matthews was selected based on the highest evaluation score, and we entered into the contract with them in July of 2016. So there was a competitive process at the time. They were the most qualified bidder with the best rates for the county. We are only asking to extend this for 1 year at this time until we're not in the midst of real estate transactions with them and have an opportunity to put a new RFP together.
Commissioner, to answer your question, at least from my understanding, there's not that unusual for a real estate broker to represent the buyer and the seller.
Have we had any prior issues in terms of this contract?
They've
Charges?
been wonderful for us, and no, there have been no issues with Kidder Matthews.
And
We
again, this is
also-
just to extend the services, just in case we need it. There is no money specific associated with this extension.
Right, and recently they've been doing a lot of work for us that is not on the fee basis because it is real estate related. Services such as they took Mary Hall around to look at all available properties in the area that might meet her needs, at the conclusion of which she decided that Mottman was the thing that met her needs the most. But Kidder Matthews was the agent that took her around. We turned to them when we were looking for real estate for the courthouse. And they don't charge for those kinds of services.
Just a follow-up. There's something going on the Mottman in which if something didn't happen, then they were gonna cover the cost versus that we were gonna cover the cost on the Mottman exchange. What's the deal on that? What was the?
Perhaps are you talking about, right now we're talking about utilities and the time in which who's gonna be paying for utilities?
No, it seemed to me there was
That's
some
the
connection.
latest that I've been tracking on the emails, but nothing, I know that we currently have an issue on the AC.
That's right, so there's a couple things, and the first is the utilities. We adjusted the close date to close on the last day of a month so that the rent collected was for a full month, the utilities for a full month.
Who are we
It
talking
makes
about right now?
we're talking about the purchase of Mottman.
That's
Oh,
what-
mopping.
Mottman. So that's been negotiated to close at a time when the books can be clean, if you will, for both the current tenants and the buyer and seller. The other thing that's going on right now is the air conditioning sprang a leak a few days ago in the building that Mary's group is in, and the current landlord is fixing that and will be responsible for the repair, whether it's completed by the end of this month or not. And we're retaining some money in escrow till we can figure out exactly what that's gonna cost. So there are a few things like that we're
Is that what you recall,
addressing,
Commissioner?
but
I just recall there was something that they were kind of covering both ends of it, that's all.
are you talking about the fact that the county's negotiations led to us paying the real estate, the fee for Kidder Matthews?
Maybe that's what it was.
So under a normal transaction, a normal being just what I understand is common place, is the seller pays the fee, the broker's fee for both the seller's representative and the buyer's representative, that's a normal real estate transaction. However, everything's negotiable. And as you know, the owner negotiated having the county, the buyer, pay the buyer's broker's fee. So that is just part of the deal that we
I
made.
think that's the piece that I was
Well,
wondering.
that's the
about.
deal that we made, and while it's not normal, it's not unusual.
Okay. Okay.
Ready to move on? Let's look at 4D, setting a public hearing for proposed C-PACER ordinance.
Yeah, Commissioners, you have been involved in many briefings related to the commercial property assessed clean energy and resilience, also known as PACER. This is related to, I believe, a 2019 legislature, which allows for the legislative authority to implement this program where a third party provides funding to those commercial properties to do energy efficient and green improvements on their buildings. So before the board can take an action and implement in this particular ordinance, you need to hold a public hearing. And this item is scheduled for July 20th, 2021 at 3 in the afternoon. Commissioner Edwards last week requested to Jenica to be prepared as part of the presentation in the public hearing to speak about the third party involvement, how that investment properties can play a role in that. So certainly she'll be able to provide that perspective at the public hearing.
Questions on this?
No, sir.
All right, thank you, Jenica. Item 5A, Community Planning and Economic Development Capital Improvement Program Amendment.
This is an item that has been in board's conversations in many occasions. And this is the follow-up to the public hearing you held on this particular item last Tuesday. And also you had a follow-up related to the public hearing comments that you received on Thursday. And I believe on Thursday, Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Menser wanted to move forward this item to include and amend the capital facilities plan to include the 3000 Pacific building as well as the Monument property as part of the process. I believe I wasn't here, but I heard Commissioner Edwards was not in support of that action. So this is I believe, for your final consideration to amend the capital facilities plan to include those two projects.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions.
No questions.
Okay. I guess I just make the comment that the public comment largely related to procedural issues, and the board has reviewed each and every one of those with council and was advised that there was no sort of fatal issues with respect to legal process with regard to this, which is kind of a formalistic action, which is to make an amendment to the capital improvement program. So with that, let's look at 5B, conservation easement for Lorraine Tibetan.
You also reviewed this item last week, Commissioners, and just going to provide a brief background to the citizens. And this is related to the Habitat Conservation Plan. And the options that any citizen who would like to develop or build a home, in this case, on their property, they have found evidence of the existence of the endangered species of black gopher. Those property owners or developers have three options. One is to go through avoidance for that particular development. Second is to wait until the county secures a habitat conservation plan, which my hope is by the end of the year we'll be in that position. And third is for any citizens can engage directly with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and go through their individual habitat conservation plan, HCP, related to the specific properties. Mr. Tibetan has gone through this process a couple of occasions. It is a long process. It is really complex process. And as you stated last week, we have to commend Mr. Tibetan for the diligence that he has to work with the federal government to get to this point. So this particular item is related to he received an approval of their HCP, and also is granting they can impact the habitat of the pocket gopher as long as they reserve an easement in perpetuity, and that's where the county plays a role. Because the federal government doesn't allow for the individual property owner or developer who created the impact for them to be the owners and the ones who provide oversight on the mitigation easement. So the county has taken this action, I believe, in a handful of occasions, helping our citizens who have gone through this very difficult process for us to take the responsibility of managing this easement, which requires a visual observation on a yearly basis, and also provide a report to U.S. Fish and Wildlife on a yearly basis. In this case, I believe we set aside 0.75 acres of this parcel just to meet the requirements of the impact. And this item is for you to consider taking the conservation easement under the Thurston County's responsibilities. When we get to the point of securing an HCP, then those easements will probably be relinquished, perhaps. We find a way as to how that impact can be absorbed in the overall mitigation plan that we have under our proposed HCP. Brent Burris is here to have provide additional perspective or answer any additional questions.
Anything for Brett?
No.
No, sir. No, we're good to go. 6A, contract with Uptrust for a messaging communications service. And I see Dennis Osorio, IT Director.
We also review this particular item, Commissioners. This is to provide the Office of Public Defense with an additional application to have a two-way texting communications with their clients, and also provides a much better way to communicate some of the other related interactions they have, the public defenders with their clients. This is also an application that connects well and works well with the new case management system that is in coordination being implemented with the prosecutor attorney's office. And the $21,960 and $7,200 annual is part of the overall investment at the beginning, and the long-term annual fee will be part of the future IT internal rates. Last week, I believe the commissioners asked the question, what is the opportunity for others to take advantage of this new application? And I believe that certainly is going to be an opportunity for other parts of the county business, particularly law and justice, that can use this system when it proves to be successful. Dennis?
Good morning, Commissioner. Dennis Osorio, IT Director. Rivera covered it pretty well. I just wanted to mention, I know we did talk about the funding, and this is coming out of the project budget for the JTI project. And I did go and did some research, and one of the interfaces that will not be implemented that was budgeted for was the SunGuard interface. And that is not due to the JTI project, but our product rather due to, I believe, the SunGuard product not allowing things to interface with it. So we'll be repurposing those funds to purchase this texting service. In addition, I know some of the questions have been brought up about integrating with other products. Some products they partner with other applications, so they already have that built-in integration. So we did look at the, make sure I get it right, MSRC list. And out of the 5 products that were similar to this, only one other one actually met the requirements, and they could not give us a time or a cost estimate that they'd be able to integrate with the JTI product.
Any questions on this item?
No, sir.
I guess maybe Dennis or the county manager could clarify this. this could help a defendant to make his court dates and such, and which in turn could alleviate jail overcrowding and such, I suppose, as a piece of the.
That is, I believe, from my point of view, a benefit, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Pretrial services has worked with that system, not the system, but the texting mechanism, and it's proven to be really effective for them.
It is a little bit different though. This allows for a two-way texting communication. I believe the pretrial services is just one-way texting,
Yeah.
which this could probably be as an opportunity for them to receive. This may enhance their activities, but you're right, has helped a lot.
Okay, that's 6A. Thank you, Dennis.
Thanks.
Let's go to Public Health and Social Services. We have 4 items here. 7A is DSHS Long-Term Payable Interlocal Agreement number 216323634.
Thank you, Commissioners. You reviewed this item last week as well, and this is related to the services that we provide to developmental disabilities individuals here in the county, where the state covers the cost. There is also a little bit of an issue as to how we're going to be managing cash flow when some of the providers provide those services for us to, as a result, provide services to those individuals in need under this program. So what this particular item allows us to receive an upfront money from the state in order for us to manage the cash flow. This is not unusual. This is something we have practiced in the past. In this particular item, the term of this contract will be from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. And includes a $774,651.66. And that's really allows to, provide the services and have the cash at hand to pay for those providers. Any questions?
Any questions this week?
No, sir.
No.
I know we had some last week. Okay, thank you. Very good. Let's go to 7B. Amendments to the ESG CV contracts for homeless services.
You also reviewed this item last week, Commissioners. As a matter of perspective and background, on November 3rd, 2020, the Board of County Commissioners approved a contract amendment with the Washington State Department of Commerce to receive under the Emergency Solutions Grant COVID program a total of $3,882,592. On December 1st, 2020, the Board of County Commissioners approved executing contracts value a total of $2,577,286 to 8 agencies to continue services related to support the vulnerable parts of our population who have been adversely affected by the pandemic, which also includes homelessness. So the result of that contract, you authorize contracts to the Community Action Council, to the City of Olympia, to Family Support Center, Interfaith Works, Prevention Partners in Prevention, in Education, also a Safe Place. This amendment modifies some of the initial allocations to those initial contracts that you approved back in December. So the result of that is an additional $1,070,000, which includes reduction of about $500,000 from to the Community Action Council contract, adding $30,000 to the City of Olympia, adding $420,000 to Family Support Center South Sound to the shelter hotel vouchers, adding $400,000 to Interfaith Works for the First Christian Emergency Shelter, adding $400,000 also to Interfaith Works, but for the 3444 Martin Way Shelter, and an additional $200,000 to Partners in Prevention in Education, that will be shelter in place, and $120,000 to Safe Place, also to provide shelter hotel vouchers. Tom is here to answer any additional questions related to this amendment.
Tom, anything to add up front?
No, I think that's an excellent summary, but happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
No questions for me.
And Tom, this is coming from money coming in from DSHS?
It's ultimately coming from the federal government, so these are
From
through
CARES
HUD.
Act?
Yes, under the CARES Act.
But the contract is with the Department of Commerce.
The contract is with the Department of Commerce. The Department
So
of
it's kind of
Commerce
that
received these
fast.
funds from HUD through the CARES Act and is awarding them to the counties.
Okay, thank you.
And these amendments, so we're taking that additional funding and kind of allocating it to the existing programs, is that?
That's correct.
Because it's a contract amendment?
That is correct. When we initially funded these contracts, we did hold back this money because we wanted to see what the needs were going to be, the evolving needs of the community in response to COVID. So we're at the point where these shelters, especially in shelter in place, even with the lifting of restrictions, those restrictions are still in place for homeless shelters. So there's still requirements for social distancing, and the need for the hotel vouchers and other services. So we've determined that we need to continue to support our homeless services, continue these activities for the remainder of the year and early next year.
And did this flow through Regional Housing Council?
No, this is, that was a conversation directly with the board.
Okay, this was our staff's proposal to us.
Right, a little bit different outside of the Regional Housing Council.
Okay. Item 7C is Amendment 3 to Healthcare Authority contract regarding criminal justice treatment account.
So items 7C and 7D are related. As you may recall, last week I highlighted the item 3C is related to the criminal justice treatment account, where due to the pandemic, the allocation that we received, we were not able to spend, and we have to return $75,000 back to the healthcare authority. On the flip side of that, at 7D is a contract where we'll be receiving $734,444 for the next year for the same purposes. So the first item is we were not able to spend money since they gave us additional money during the year. And just the pandemic put us in a position that we were not able to provide those services. So we returned $75,000 for this past year, and we're gonna be receiving $734,404 for July 1st, 2021 through June 30, 2023 as a buy-in, sorry, if I stand corrected. Carrie Henning is here to answer additional questions.
Questions for Carrie?
No, not in regards to this.
No, sir. No, me neither. Let's keep going. Let's go a few minutes further. We'll get some public works items here and then take a break. 8A is professional services contract for materials testing, inspection services, on-call consultant.
Yeah, Commissioners, you authorized the Department of Public Works to request bids for material testing services for construction projects. So on May 27, 2021, the department receives 4 proposals for material testing and inspection. And the low bidder was the Material Testing and Consulting Incorporated of Olympia. There is a maximum amount of the proposed contract of $250,000. And that will be on a need basis when we require their services to test materials on those construction projects. So this contract will go through at least the next 6 years with an option to extend those for 2 years if that works out. And again, this is just a ceiling of $250,000, and the funds that will be common, it will be paid from the many different sources that we use to build infrastructure, whether it's federal grants or road projects or REIT, anything that is related on the construction funding, it will be covering the cost of this professional services. Steve Berger is here to answer any additional questions.
Mr. Edwards?
Steve, this is for the $250,000 is for the 6-year period, I take it, right?
Yes, and it's an initial 2-year contract with the option to do two-year extensions.
Did we have a prior 6-year contract with this outfit?
We haven't had a long-term, long duration contract like that with the material testing company. For probably 5 or 6 years. Everything's been on an individual basis. So it's been a while since we've had kind of a larger contract like this.
So we don't have an immediate comparison we can do as how we did over the last period of time for a similar amount of money, right?
I guess I don't understand the question.
Well, Steve, if I may.
Sure.
I think the question is, in the past, although we didn't have the 6-year contract for material testing were is part of any construction contract. And I believe at that time, we were securing those services on a need-by-need basis with some approved consultants, which created a lot more work to have those individual contracts with those individual contractors. In this case, is by having a 6-year contract, it will give us the ability to streamline the process to secure the services for material testing, which at the end is going to save us money.
Yeah, that's correct. This is going to be a lot more efficient and save a lot of staff time.
And this is, yeah, I think so. This is a 2-year contract with possibilities for extending to a 6.
6-year with a possibility of 2 more.
Oh, okay, okay.
250,000 over 6 years.
Yeah.
Should we put the duration in this item? Doesn't say anything about,
Yes. Yeah, we'll add the direction.
because that shows
Okay.
that it's really a more modest expenditure.
Sure.
What it reads.
Good idea.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mejia?
Yes, I didn't hear how many bidders there were in total.
4.
4?
Okay, looks like we're good on that one. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Let's look at 8B, Master Interlocal Agreement with the Nisqually Indian Tribe for the Rural Community Support Program.
The board has, in the past, has authorized similar contracts when dealing with federal funds with organizations that perhaps don't have the means and methods to manage some of the federal funds requirements. As an example, what we do is we have an agreement with the Thurston County Regional Council where we get the federal funds, and as a result, we transfer what we call local funds, which then we can implement improvements within those jurisdictions using just county dollars. It's more of a, a shift between the color of the money. We have practiced that in a couple of occasions particularly with Rainier, I believe, in Bucota, where they get allocated federal funds. And there's very onerous, they don't have the structure to meet the requirements of the federal funds. So the county takes the federal funds, and as a result, with a fee, we put money towards their improvements without having to meet the requirements of the federal contracts. So this is similar to that, is within the Nisqually Indian Tribe. And again, this is related to the Rural Community Support Program funds issued by the Thurston County Regional Planning Council. And I believe this is a great cooperation that we have had over the last few years. And it's not unusual. Other counties exercise the same approach. It's just to help those smaller jurisdictions who doesn't have the ability to meet the demands and the requirements of federal grants. And as a result, we partnered with them to make their improvements happen.
So the tribes are in there just like a city of Rainier or something?
Right. And I believe Becky is here to correct me, anything that I just said, or anything that I missed.
No, you did a great job, County Manager. Thank you. Hi, can you answer?
Is there a dollar amount associated with any of this activity, and what type of activity is covered?
So each round of funding, could be a different dollar amount, and we would execute a memorandum of understanding with each jurisdiction at that point, depending on that dollar amount. This current round, they had $550,000 that they were splitting amongst it ended up being 4 jurisdictions in this round that wanted to participate. And it is for transportation infrastructure improvements, such as there's a sidewalk improvement. BoCC is looking to do improvements on their main street. The Nisqually tribe is looking for help with some sidewalk in front of their elderly facility that they're building, I believe.
How about rural transit? Is this, do we get money for rural transit out of here?
No.
Nothing to do with transit?
No.
So yet to be determined is the dollar amount and activity, really.
So I think, if I may think in the terms of creating that umbrella. So that this umbrella, this contract provides the allowance for us to work on the details. So when the details of the allocation, as Becky stated, then we get into a memorandum to understand in detail how much money is going to be put work and what type of improvements will be working for those jurisdictions. That's really is the allowance. This agreement is the allowance, the umbrella to work through the details later on.
We get a 10% or something of that for
What is
administrative
I think
overhead.
we get 10%, right?
I do not know the exact percentage, but we do get the amount that covers kind of our costs to administer those fees.
And this agreement is a parallel to agreements we have with BoCC,
Yes,
Rainier,
similar.
and whoever else is in that category. Tenino too, right?
Correct.
Tenino, we have provided to Tenino as well, right?
Yeah, we did 3 late last year. It was the city of Tenino, the city of Rainier, and the town of BoCC. So this is the final one we're putting in place for this program.
Okay.
What's the administration fee we charge for this? Is
I
that-
think Becky was saying maybe 10% of the allocation of the funds.
Okay, thank you, Becky. 10:30, let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 10:40 with item 8D. Oh, sorry, 8C, solid waste.
You're like,
Okay, we're back. It's 10. Oh, let's get me. Okay, we're back. 10:41 a.m. Picking back up on the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session for June 29th, 2021. We left off under item 3, which is a review of this afternoon's board agenda, which is very lengthy. We will be picking up now with 8C. It's under Public Works. This item is a resolution authorizing contract negotiations for solid waste operations, maintenance, transport, and disposal services.
Thank you, Commissioner. Has been a long journey. And this is related to replace the current contracts that we have here in the county. And back in 2018, the Board of County Commissioners had many briefings in which the board agreed the best way to secure the new services of the new contract and the most transparent and beneficial to the residents of Thurston County will be going with a request for proposals. The request for proposals was issued on January 13, 2021, and the proposals were due April 8, 2021. We've received 3 responsive proposals, and the evaluation committee, which was composed by members of the representatives of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and some of the jurisdictions within Thurston County, provided a perspective and recommendations for the board. And this particular conversation occurred through a couple of lengthy executive sessions where the board had the opportunity to ask questions, get a little more, get well-vetted information related to this particular approach, and which concluded on this item for each authorize begin negotiations with the highest scoring proposal of the solid waste contract. I know that I can speak for another hour related to the process of the solid waste, but if you have any questions, I'm here, as well as Karen Weiss, and I believe Jennifer Walker is also available. No, Jennifer's not here. Oh, she is. To answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Mejia?
no, I do not have any questions.
I do have a couple of questions. We're trying to get the best deal we can get for the taxpayers of Thurston County, is my understanding. I know staff's done, a lot of work on this. But I don't know what questions I can ask in public, I guess. At what point can we talk about this? I can be kind of generic, but I kind of want to be specific. Do you want me to start with being a little generic and see if I run afoul of anything?
Sure.
Because I know you tend to let me know if I overstep. On the dollar amount that carried the biggest weight in point factors in this decision, there was quite a discrepancy between all 3 bidders, I think is right. Just a true statement, right? Mm-hmm. How do we know what we're going to get or not get based on that dollar amount? That quite a bit of a discrepancy between the 3 bidders. So how do we know that we're going to get what we want if somebody bid, half as much as somebody else? We're not going to get something. I don't know what we're not going to get, but we're not going to get something because either they won't make any money on it or they'll lose money on it. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we know we're getting the best deal for the taxpayers of Thurston County? So the lower amount bid obviously is better, but is the service provided, is it going to be as good as maybe another outfit that bid a little different, say higher, I guess, because it's kind of hard to explain this when I don't know to what extent I can get into it. I don't want to run afoul of things, so. You just kind of get a sense of what I'm asking. I'm wondering if we get the good service, or do we just get a real cheap bid and we don't get very good service? And how do we rectify that situation?
So to answer, let me see if I can answer your question.
Okay, good, I'm all ears.
All those are good questions, and I believe during those executive sessions, in a way, we answer those, because the dollar amount provided was just one element.
But it was the major.
It was significant points.
Right.
But other elements, the review committee and evaluation committee provided as to the recommendations before you. On the overall, you asked the values of going through this process, and I believe in your email is a very nice outline that Jennifer provided as to what the value and the benefits going through this process will be, not just for the county, but also to the residents of Thurston County. The details of the contract is really, this is the step.
Yet to be determined.
Because this is the step. Because on this action that you may consider, you're not approving a contract. It's just authorizing the start of the negotiations. And leading to a final approval, perhaps, that you may consider down the road, and I believe we have an expectation in September, if I recall well the schedule. There will be many conversations with you in an executive session that you will be keeping abreast as to the terms and conditions of this new contract. But overall, from my perspective, is a great value added to the county as well as to the residents. And one of the value addeds is through this process, I believe is going to be streamlining the way we process solid waste in the county by far.
I guess my concern is that, you know, I made a suggestion earlier, but was told, no, you can't go into that, you know, so I didn't go into it any farther. Because I do want to get the best deal for the citizens of Thurston County that ultimately are affected either through the service or possibly as a taxpayer through the expenditure of tax dollars. So even though we move forward on this, if we find out that the bidder can't provide X service for the dollar amount that was bid, we still have the option to go back and review the rest of the RFPs that came in? Or is that how it works? I mean,
Yes, and you can, the board has many options. This is the next step in the process. And if the board feels that, you know, from your perspective, the new contract may not bring the value, the benefits that you see, there's many options.
then at that point, we could actually talk about cost.
Yeah, and I believe that was provided to you as well on the executive
And I'm
session.
just not thrilled about.
Which is, you know, I cannot elaborate any details.
Not talking about things in public that has, you know, that have a direct effect on the taxpayers, that's all. So if we're not there yet, we're just going into negotiations. I think staff will address all my concerns, but I've never been involved in one of these yet, so I'm gonna depend on staff to see if they can figure this out. Okay, that's my only question.
Oh, I don't have any.
Okay. My question is about at what point, it's maybe for Karen, I guess, but at what point will the scoring and the company's names that scored in what place be public? I mean, it's not in this document, It's not in Jennifer's attachment that she sent us. I just want to make sure that I have an awareness of when the public becomes aware of who we're in negotiations with and why.
So yeah, so following the board decision on this issue, we will be notifying the proposers of their, whether or not they were the highest scoring proposal and next steps moving forward from that. We have been advised from our legal that the scoring proposals themselves, we would not necessarily release that, but would certainly be available if there was a public records request, we would provide that information.
So as far as today's concerned, we follow a very generic approach, and then you're gonna, if the board approves this items 8C, then you're gonna take the ball and run with it from there, and the public and the competitors and et cetera will be alerted shortly.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I wanted to be clear about that.
Could I follow up on that,
Yep.
sir? So in essence, are we going to tell the outfit that we're gonna say got the bid, we're gonna let them know, and the others, we're gonna tell them, well, you didn't get the bid. Thanks for bidding, but you didn't get the bid. Or are we gonna say, but stand by to the ones that didn't get the bid? Would we say, but stand by, because if you're still gonna be possibly on the list, if you will, if we can't reach an agreement with the low bidder, I guess, is that the right term to use?
The highest score.
The highest score, okay. How does that fit?
So the communication that I envision would be based on the board action today, which is to move forward with contract negotiations with the highest scoring proposer. And that would be the message that was communicated out to the three proposers as to whether or not they were the highest scoring proposer. And for that higher scoring proposer, that we would be commencing contract negotiations and having that discussion.
Jennifer, do you have anything to add there? I saw you shaking your head.
I have a computer issue, so I'm delayed, but I was shaking my head no to the comment that was made regarding this being the lowest bidder. Because there were, part of the evaluation was cost, another was sustainability, another was the operations. That I think speaks directly to Commissioner Edwards' comment regarding if they're not going to be able to do this. The operations, which was and also a key component of the evaluation, those were looked at very closely.
Okay, I think maybe I want to follow up with Commissioner Mentzer's question on, it's the highest point process that's going to get the bid.
The highest scoring proposal.
The highest scoring proposal. I think Karen mentioned the ability of the bidders that did not receive that highest score wanting to review the whole process possibly. And when does that become public information? You made mention that they could put in for a public information request. And then, so what would be the process there? I mean, what's the difference between, we had 3 bidders, why can't we share all the information with all of them? They can scrutinize the other guy's deal at the same time. Or do we say, no, you have to put in a Freedom of Information request, and then we respond back in 5 days and say, okay, there's 8,000 pages in this request, and so it's going to take us 90 days to get it to you? Or do we drag our feet, or do we just give it to them?
Not necessarily. And again, this was discussed in an executive session, specifically that question, because there is some of the proposals include proprietary information by the proponents.
Well, I thought they already reviewed proprietary information and took
No, what,
that out.
what I'm trying to respond is we cannot release everything. You know, everything, depending on the request for information, then we have to release whatever is appropriate. So, and that's what I'm trying to
So
address here.
if one outfit says they're flying stuff to the moon to get rid of it, and they've got a secret sauce to make that happen, we can't give that out, apparently. But I don't know of anything
And
like
it's not unusual. We got on replacing IT, you know, systems.
Right.
We went through the process, we select the contractor, the others requested to see their proposals from other vendors.
The budget system was a big thing, and they filed public records request. We go through the process of redacting, working with the different bidders to redact what they feel is proprietary, and then we release what we can in accordance with the request that we receive.
Right.
That's a normal part of the contracting process.
That's why we have a team of lawyers that
Yes.
work
That's
on
right.
the public
So,
records.
and we never drag our feet. We go as quickly as we can to respond to those.
And I understand the complexity and, you know, the nuances of this, because this is not a normal bidding process.
Yeah.
This is not the regular bidding process that for instance, you have many public works projects that you award the contract to the low bidder. This is different because there is, as Jennifer stated, the selection criteria includes other elements that brings value to the citizens.
Sorry to laugh.
It kind of all depends, I guess. I hear that from lawyers all the time. Well, it depends. Okay, well, I'm okay with moving ahead. I'm just trying to figure out how do we make sure that we get the best deal for the taxpayers. That's all I'm concerned about. So, I'm good to go on.
Okay. I was just remembering that conversation about horses' heads. I didn't want to get into that. 2 words, Commissioner. Horse head.
No, I'm trying, I hope we don't go that direction.
Okay.
But it's a lot of money. That's what I'm concerned about.
All right, so we're good, and I think I understand that we're gonna be keeping this really, as outlined here on item 8C, very neutral at this juncture.
And thank you, staff, for all their hard work that went into this.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Jennifer. 8D is a resolution for development agreement with Kaufman Holdings, Inc.
Yeah, Commissioners, for your consideration is for you to approve the development agreement with Kaufman Holdings. In this related to get into an agreement for them to pay ahead the traffic impact fees to help us build a runabout located at the US 12 and Sergeant Road. We held a public hearing on June 8th, 2021, and this item is for your final consideration.
Thank you.
No.
Okay, good. No questions from me either. Let's go to 8E, resolution and call for sealed bids for the Burfoot Park restroom replacement project.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners, for your considerations to authorize Public Works to call for sealed bids to replace the 30-year-old bathrooms that we currently have in the Burfoot Park. Those bathrooms they're in great deal need of repair. They do not have ADA compliant access. So this will give us an indication as to how we're going to be getting those improvements in place. After we receive the bids, we'll come back with another item for you to consider awarding the contract to the low bidder in this case. And we estimate the contract will be funded. It will be funded by the park impact fees, and as well as the real estate excise tax too, which also is included in the 2021 budget. Any questions?
Any questions on Burfoot Park?
No, sir.
So just completely destroying the old ones and
The only
putting
ones.
new ones? Okay. I know this is on our project plan. Okay, let's go to 8F, resolution and call for sealed bids for the Deschutes Falls Park walkway and viewing platform project.
Yeah, there's a continued series of improvements on the on this particular park, the Shoots Falls Park, which we opened, I believe, 3 years ago, and it has been a great success. We have a lot of people visiting this park, and the result. I mean, the beauty of this park is the waterfalls. There's absolutely gorgeous waterfalls in this park. What this particular project is intended to construct a steel graded platform. They will allow for viewing and pedestrian access. They will be also enhance some of the safety elements to that. And again, these items for you to authorize the department to issue a call for seal bids. And then we'll come back to the board for you to consider awarding to the low bidder. This also is covered by the park impact fees as well as the real estate excise tax too. And is included in the current budget.
So Romero, is this for the design or has the design been done?
This is to actual for construction. The design
Oh,
has
so we
been-
already have a design. It'd be great to see that.
Questions? The board?
Yes.
Commissioner Ambrose, go ahead.
Is there anything included in here that would go out to bid on that would have something to do with parking and access for disabled people to be able to view this park? Because right now, we don't have any access for them to get down near the park. And I'm just trying to think of, is there a way we can include that in there, or is it included in?
I don't believe so, but Kevin, can you elaborate on that?
There are no parking improvements included in this project. I know Ed Marson is also on here as well. He's the Parks Maintenance and Operations Manager. And I know we have future improvements to the park for parking spaces. However, I don't believe we have any improvements for ADA access down to that lower portion with this project.
At this point.
Correct.
Pending, is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, there's always opportunities. It's all about the money. I'm sure you have visited this park.
Yes.
In getting access to the lower part, there's a significant grade change. You know, it's very steep slope. In order to get a good ADA slope, it has to be a lot of work that needs to be done in the park. So certainly there is an opportunity in the future if we found the money to do so. But
Okay, I guess, yeah, I've been there many, many years ago. Even in those days, you could drive down there. So there is driving access that goes down to the falls, but we don't utilize that right now because we keep the cars all parked up above. So I would just say if you had a disabled placard, do you become eligible maybe to drive down? I'm just trying to figure out a way for seniors and challenged folks to be able to access the beauty of that park. That's all I'm looking for. And I want to make it simple, and I don't want it to cost much. And it used to be for 60 years, people have been driving down to the park from the parking area that we now have up on top. And there is a road that goes down there, and you don't have to have a four-wheel drive or anything. You just need, any vehicle can drive down there. So I'm trying to figure out why we're not putting a little more effort into folks that face challenges. And there's a magnitude of folks that fall in that category. That's all I'm wondering about. So what's the deal?
Ed, you want to provide a
You
perspective?
try to answer that, Ed?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely discussion to be had for a process, because at Burfoot Park, we have a similar situation where we do have an ADA access road that accesses the bulkhead down there. And what the process is for that currently is we will get a call in. It's part of kind of like our reservation process. anybody that's interested in using the ADA access, which is a gated road that goes by our caretaker's facility, they call in, request access. We either provide them with a key to the lock, or we have staff meet them out there to open that gate. Similarly at Fry Cove, where we have a gated driveway down to the restrooms, we do allow for reservations and mobility challenged individuals, ADA access, for people to drive them down there and then drive the vehicle back up and not park it down for public access or liability issues. So I think feasibly, we could potentially have the same discussion for Deschutes Falls. The issue being immediate access out there isn't entirely possible if they show up and they want access without scheduling ahead of time. There's poor cell service out there. There's no communication option out there at this point to request that access on the spot. So it would have to be more of a scheduled event where we could provide a key or access.
We do have a phone line, I think, out there though, don't we?
Yeah, we have a phone line out there. There's a landline in our well house. It's for emergencies only at this point. We don't have public access to it yet.
Do we have a caretaker that's there when the park is open?
Yes, we have a caretaker that lives on site. They do work during the day, but they do open the gates in the morning and at night, and then they are there, periodically throughout the day as their schedule allows.
This may be a topic for a different day.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
We've got,
We don't have enough time.
item at hand is a call for sealed bids on the walkway, and we're good there.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
All right,
Yes,
thank
sir.
Okay,
Good
great.
point.
Item 8G, set a public hearing for vehicular weight restrictions.
Yeah, the board received a briefing related to this particular request initiated by some citizens, and for your consideration is to set a public hearing for August 24, 2021. During the afternoon for you to receive public testimony, or you may consider taking an action to put some weight restrictions on this particular bridge. And that will be the bridge on Young Highway that leads to the Amtrak station. So it gives you a perspective where that is.
All right, and those,
Yeah, go ahead.
those restrictions are pretty mild, aren't they? I mean, it's not much of a change, but we have to change to be compliant on
Yeah, because
some
the
federal thing?
the federal government changed the weight and the type of vehicles in which we assess the many different bridges. So the result of changing those type of vehicles applied to this bridge, then we need to implement those weight restrictions. But yeah,
But they're not substantial changes, are they?
I don't believe so, but certainly a weight restriction is a weight restriction.
Well, yes, but I mean, it isn't like everybody's gonna have to take a detour.
No, we're not gonna be allowing just bicyclists on this.
Yeah, okay.
We had a good separate briefing on this, I know.
Yeah.
You're now reminding me, and this is different than the compression brakes,
This is different than compression brakes. This is the weight
which is
restriction.
also coming up for public hearing,
Yeah,
right?
that is correct, sir.
Okay. All right, but this one was really, that one was about sort of a community complaint. This is about staff assessment of an engineers based on a legal change. Okay.
Yeah, I think they took like public works cars on there and like they did the whole study to see which, what kind of trucks would be limited, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and if you remember, my question at that point was, if we put weight restrictions, can we access federal money to replace the bridge? And Matt told me no. So, missed opportunity.
What about this infrastructure bill potentially going through Congress? Might it have some?
Oh, no,
Might have something
I think
there,
we can only hope
Okay.
that we can get access to infrastructure money because it's needed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item is 9A, resolution for 2021 budget amendment 1. Robin Campbell's here.
So this is the first budget amendment of 2021, and We have reviewed it extensively. You held the public hearing last week. It has a multitude of items in it, technical, unanticipated, and then also the Mottman and the Pacific, the 3000 Pacific building. There's money in there to address both of those. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have this morning.
And when you say there's money in there, it's budget authority.
It is budget authority. That's all a budget ever is budget authority. The county may or may not spend the money on everything in the budget. The Mottman, specifically Mottman and the 3000 building, Mottman, we're going to spend it. We're currently in a contract. If the board approves the budget amendment, we will close tomorrow. If, however, the 3000 Pacific building, you have not given a green light on that yet. And so the money is here should you approve us going forward. If you don't, the money won't be spent.
Commissioner Mejia, any questions on budget amendment?
No, I think we've had plenty of discussions about this.
Commissioner Evans?
I don't have any questions. I do have concerns, but we'll just deal with those in the democratic process, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any questions either. I just want to make sure the public understands we've got capital improvement amendment, we've got budget amendment, and then at some point, maybe a decision about actual moving forward, and those are three separate things. Kind of complicated if you're just a lay person observing from the outside. Okay, so that's 9A. We'll have reports from the commissioners, review of our schedule, and we'll adjourn. Who knows what time we'll adjourn, because it's a pretty long agenda. But we have a public hearing. It's tentatively scheduled for 3 p.m. or soon thereafter, as may be heard, which might be 3:30, might be, 4, who knows? But hopefully it'll be not too far after 3, and it's a hearing regarding extension ordinance for economic security and relief.
Yeah, this, for your consideration, you will be receiving public testimony where you may consider extending the ordinance 15942 to extend the permit deadlines to September 30, 2021. The board has exercised that in the past due to some of the building industry being affected by the pandemic. And this will give them a relief as to when they can continue to have their permits in place. This is aligned to the previous item, previous action by the Board of Health related to the septic permits. So we aligned those to September 30, 2021. I believe the board had some conversations whether you can extend this. Certainly, when the time comes, you have the option to extend that if that's the case. For your consideration, I have two actions for you this afternoon. One is to close the public hearing, and the other, depending on the public testimony, is for you to approve the ordinance.
Anything we need to address? Nope, we're good. Thank you, Brett. All right, that closes out item 3 on this morning's work session. Item 4 is just making note that next week's meeting is canceled, the 2 p.m. meeting. Monday is, county offices are closed for the observation of the July 4th holiday. So let's go to item 5, proclamations and awards.
Good morning, Amy Davis, clerk of the board. There are no proclamations included today.
None today, and our next one up is pretrial and probation week, which we'll do on July 13th, so that will be on next Tuesday morning's agenda setting. Okay. Then let's go to item 6, advisory boards and commissions.
Included in your packet are the now 3 applications received for the vacant farmer position on the Agriculture Committee. The board had asked the committee to provide a recommendation, so the committee met with the 3 applicants at their regular meeting of Thursday, June 17th. The committee did provide a majority and minority report, and those are included in your packets. The majority report recommends appointment of Glenn Shorno, and the minority report recommends appointment of Mercy Kariuku McGee. Again, these are here for your review, and we can discuss these, or you can take a look over the next week, and we can circle back next Tuesday morning for board direction. And I'm happy to take any follow-up questions back to the Ag Committee.
So it's not on today's agenda anyway, so it's,
No, a formal appointment is not on the agenda today.
But you do have the option if the board
Yes.
decides, we can add those to this agenda, depending how you want to have this conversation. So you do have that option.
Commissioner Mejia, do you have any preference on when we discuss and decide this issue?
So I feel like, well, I don't really, I mean, since next week's, so we, be like, let's add it on to next week's agenda, but I do not have a preference on when it's added. I don't have comments about who to appoint, but I'm not sure if we're there yet.
This would be for Amy, I guess. So, did we have 3 applicants, but only 2 recommendations back from the Ag Committee? Is that what happened?
Correct. They met with all 3 applicants and they provided their majority report recommendation, and the minority report as well followed.
So what were the numbers associated with those reports from the Ag Committee?
Like a vote?
Yeah,
A
I
tally
mean,
vote?
how many were for one, how many were for the other, that kind of thing?
A vote count was not listed, but I can receive, right, I can receive clarification from the committee if you'd like that.
Well, I think that, I mean, I'd sure like to know if it was, 6 for or 5 against, or whatever it was on any one of them, if it was close or if it was a major majority. A minority could be just one person. So
right.
I would definitely like to know what the numbers are as we move forward on making a decision.
Neither communications indicated that, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, I was curious.
I wonder why.
So why don't we, since it's not on today's agenda, it doesn't need to be on, we don't have a meeting, why don't we have this, why don't the board just kind of just agree to discuss and make a decision at next
Well,
Tuesday's
that's
agenda
fine.
setting? And
Oh, yeah,
then
that's
put it
fine
on
with
for
me.
13.
Yeah, that sounds
Everybody
good.
good with that?
Yeah.
And then maybe in the meantime, maybe you can find out the vote.
Yep, I can get that information.
And, okay, that covers that. Let's go to PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. Today I finalized an article with Thurston Talk on the Regional Housing Council. I expect that to be released this week. The focus is really just on introducing the council to the public and what the council's done since its formation. Because this is construction season, we're working with Public Works on some communication strategies around the multiple construction projects happening in our area this summer. We've already begun sharing information about them on our social media, but we'll be ramping up that effort in the coming weeks. So I urge citizens and residents to follow Thurston County on Facebook and Thurston County Public Works on Twitter for the most up-to-date information on these projects and roads updates. So on Thursday of last week, we announced a fire safety burn ban, which is effective through September 30th, 2021. The fire safety burn ban applies to residential yard waste burning and all land clearing burns. The use of charcoal briquettes, gas, and propane barbecues, as well as recreational fires on private residential properties is still allowed. That was followed up on Friday with a ban on the discharge of consumer fireworks. This ban is effective Monday, June 28th through July 5th. Outside of those days, the discharge of consumer fireworks is banned by state law. We have a list of local professional fireworks shows and alternate options on our fireworks webpage, which is accessible through the county's homepage. I've been getting a significant amount of calls and emails on this topic, but we're getting as much info as we can out on our social media, and the story has been run many times through our media outlets. This last week has been pretty impressive for our social media accounts with the burn ban, the fireworks ban, and the closure of Pennydale for those 2 days. Just as an example, our engagement last week on Facebook was 25,618. and that's likes, comments, and shares. And that's 2,743% higher than our weekly averages. So it's pretty impressive to show how useful social media is during emergencies or when we need to get really hot topic information out to the community. So I suggest that the community follows Thurston County Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, because we are pushing information and they're gonna get the best information from there. So pending any questions, that's what I got for you.
You mentioned hot topics, so I guess the only thing I can think of is the fireworks issue. Maybe was the hot topic, and we got a considerable more comments that came in about fireworks. So what was the number related to fireworks?
So our top 3 posts on Facebook, the first one was the discharge of consumer fireworks, and the engagement for that was 16,000. And then the second one was the countywide outdoor burn ban, and the engagement was 5,000. And then the third highest was the swim advisory at Pennydale Beach, and that was 2,500 engagements. So yes, the hottest topic has been the fireworks burn ban, or I'm sorry, the fireworks discharge ban. But on Twitter, the top one was the announcement of the hazardous weather event. So that was a reach of 7,800. And so the audiences are very different on Twitter versus Facebook. Twitter is more business, media oriented, and Facebook is more our residents oriented. So it's interesting to see what the top posts are for the 2 different platforms.
Thank you.
Megan, do you have any information on hand? You said there's a report on a website about the public fireworks displays.
Yes, so they're.
You know what Lacey and Tumwater are doing? I know Lacey had something called a drive-by fireworks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I can tell you which ones are available. So if people go to our homepage, it's the very first hot topic on the top, and it's the emergency management fireworks page. And at the bottom of that, it lists, there is the Lacey Fireworks Spectacular, Saturday, July 3rd at 10 p.m. And that's at Chinook Middle School. People will be sitting, it's a drive up and watch. So you park in your cars.
Chinook Middle School?
Chinook Middle School, yep.
Okay.
And then the City of Tumwater's Red, White, and Blue drive-through. That's Sunday, July 4th at 10 a.m. I guess that's not really fireworks, but.
Red, White, and Blue drive-through, 10 a.m. What does that mean?
I think you're up in the parade.
Yeah, it's the parade. That's the parade. Sorry, that's not fireworks. That's the parade.
They do have fireworks in the
evening.
It is only for viewing, so.
Yeah, the Thunder Valley Fireworks Show. That's Tumwater Valley Golf Course driving range, Sunday, July 4th at 10:15 p.m. There's no public viewing area, but they can be seen around the city of Tumwater, like Tumwater Hill in that area. And then Independence Day celebration at JBLM, Sunday, July 4th from 7 to 11 p.m. You have to have a DOD ID to get into that one.
Okay, great. So July 3rd, Lacey, and July 4th, Tumwater.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Let's go to item 8, briefing, public hearing decision pending. The item is plat alteration request, Walker Short Plat.
Yeah, Commissioners, on the briefing on June 16th, you hear 2 requests for a plat alterations, one of which you approved, and which was the Lipley large lot alteration. You also heard some recommendations from the Walker Shore Plat, which the conversation evolved in terms of the density. On this particular case, the tract A is set aside for when the City of Olympia will bring sewers to this particular development. At that point, they can have a larger density development. You asked staff to follow up with the City of Olympia with a couple of questions. And staff is here. If you want to come to the table and follow up, it would be great. And Travis also joined us here.
Yeah, and Ramiro and board members, if I may, this is Travis Burns, Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I should note that after the briefing from 2 weeks ago, Mr. Walker did reach out to our office and requested an opportunity to participate. I don't know if Mr. Walker is there, but I would recommend that if he hasn't had an opportunity to know when this briefing was going to be done, that we, that you do consider having him available. I think the other applicant, when we had this 2 weeks ago, did have an opportunity to provide a little context of their application, and it may be useful for the board's consideration. But again, if Mr. Walker's there, I think it'd be fine to move forward. But if he's not, I may recommend postponing and making sure he has notification that we're proceeding with a briefing.
We did notify Mr. Walker about this briefing, and we asked him to come because this is open to the public. And at that point, I believe we informed him, the chair will have the prerogative to ask him to provide testimony. He's not present today, but I believe he was informed of this briefing.
Well, let's learn what we can learn from Brett and our staffs, and then we can figure out if we want to take action or not.
So thank you very much for the summary, Travis. Thank you very much for your comments as well. So the research that was...
Introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. It's been a while since I've been in the board. So Brett Burris, Development Services Manager with Community Planning and Economic Development. Staff has done the research associated with the questions that you have. The first one, as it was suggested, was as it relates to density. The second one as it relates to public health and social services septic. And specifically the City of Olympia's recommendation. So after consulting with staff as well as our legal prosecuting attorney's office, the proposal as it's shown, which I would like to also stress that is not an application. There is no application in for any development. This is simply an application for a plat alteration. By developing one single family unit on that tract A, that would unfortunately violate the zoning standards and the density standards under Thurston County Code. Any questions regarding that? If there are not, we can, or when you're ready, we can also move to the City of Olympia's recommendation.
Commissioner?
I guess, why is it? I mean, it seems like if 10 homes are harder on the environment, one wouldn't be as hard on the environment. So tell me what the problem is by saying it's bad to do one instead of 10.
So when this was platted originally, two homes were on one lot, and the plat then divided the lot into three. One for a single family home, another for a single family home, and a set aside tract A under the plat condition requirement that it will be developed to density once public sewer is available. And so that is actually an exemption to the platting rules already. It's a set aside. If the plat could have been denied at that time for not meeting density, but creating that note on the face of the plat that once it is ready to be developed once sewer is available, it must meet the density under the current zoning of the Olympia UGA, which is our residential 4 to 8 units per acre. If development is proposed, it is not developing to the standards that were outlined in that plat. And so the impact, unfortunately, is not necessarily the functionality or cause of the reason. It's the fact that development needs to take place consistent with the zoning requirements.
But in the end, it would be consistent eventually, right? It'd just be a delay? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's actually an excellent question. We do not know if that development would proceed once that single family home is constructed.
But it certainly could once septic gets there.
It could, you're absolutely right, it could potentially once sewer gets there.
So is there no wiggle room there, I mean, for a delay process to be in place?
I think that has a lot to do with maybe leading over to public health and social services.
Okay.
Dawn Peebles, Senior Environmental Specialist with Public Health Social Services. As Brett mentioned, the subdivision originally was an exception. It didn't meet the density requirements or the sewer requirements. But because the two homes were already there, it was a way to move forward and separate them on different lots with the requirements or that condition of Track A that basically enforces the conditions and regulations that are put upon other short plats. So I did reach out to the City of Olympia to confirm that their stance remains the same. They did confirm that they are recommending denial because it does not meet their wastewater management plan. The Thurston County Sanitary Code requires all new development to meet the city's wastewater management plan because it's located within the urban growth area. The city has allowed some similar situations to do a phased approach, but they have met the conditions of sewer. So they were able to, extend the additional utility lines to create those additional lots, even though they were only building out one lot. So the city not only is recommending denial of the plat alteration, but if someone were to come in with a septic system application for this property, it is required that the City of Olympia sign off and recommend approval before our department can process it. And that's because the property is located within the urban growth area.
Did you say it was a recommendation?
So
It's law?
The denial of the plat alteration today, the City of Olympia has recommended that denial.
Right. Something about this, if they put in an application for septic to move.
Right, so in order to move forward with an actual septic system permit application with our department here, they have to go obtain the city's approval before we can process it. And the city has told us
They're not gonna
they
do
would
that.
deny it.
So we could alter the plat and they'd still have a wall that they couldn't get through.
Correct.
And Travis, what do you, I'm always happy to hear, more information is always better, as Commissioner Edwards says. But what is it that we're likely to hear from Mr. Walker, yes it was, Mr. Walker, that is gonna make this situation not, it seems pretty clear to me that we're not gonna be able to get him to the finish line, given, it seems like there's 3 or 4 different roadblocks here.
Yes, I think there's, it's a good thing to consider. As stated earlier, that is your prerogative. This is a public meeting, and you can procedurally move forward as you want. As you noted, the board could have requested a public hearing. This is not a public hearing. So, what I'm just trying to relay to you all is that, Mr. Walker reached out. I can't pretend to say what he would say, but his main concern, I will relay to you, was that he felt that his application, there was some misstatements and some confusion. I think we all recognize there was a little confusion, and I think staff have done a pretty good job following up both with the city and looking at the applicable zoning so they can better, answer the questions you might have. So, again, legally speaking, I don't think you necessarily need Mr. Walker in the room, but I do want to relay that he did want to participate and have an opportunity. So at the end of the day, I don't know if he could offer additional information at this point. He has interacted with the two different departments, provided, I think, multiple rounds of information. And so they've evaluated, at least based on the application they received, which is at issue here. So, it's your prerogative to decide if you want more information or if you want to move forward with what you've got. But I'd be remiss if I didn't let you know that he did reach out to my office, and I let him know that I would relay that to you all. So
I know at our last discussion, we had the conversation about, if it was one home, would that, be able to wade through this gauntlet, and then we'd really want to hear from that person, like, okay, if there was a path, then would that be a project that would meet your needs, or is that a project you're interested in? And then we'd need to hear that. But it doesn't sound like that's a gauntlet that we can get through. County Manager, do you have something?
Yeah, we did receive an email, I think that's what Travis is stating, on June 16th from Mr. Walker. I can probably read the details of that. I communicated with Thomasina, and my response was on June 16th. Then Mr. Walker is welcome to attend agenda setting meeting on June 29 as part of, is open to the public. But at this point, I cannot guarantee that he will be able to talk because it's up to the chair's priority, to make that call. And I believe your Assistant Commissioner Messer communicated that to him as well. On the email, if I may, I can read it to you. If there's time.
Go ahead.
He watched the replay of the meeting at that time, and I was hoping Scott or Brett will have spoken up sooner in the meeting about what I'm actually requesting to do. I want to build one house on 1 acre lot with a septic system. Due to the density restrictions, I submitted a future development plan that shows that I can meet density. This was not shown during the meeting. My building, one house on a narrow lot, along with 8 additional townhome lots, 4 on either side to meet the density requirements. I'm not following it, but yeah. In a nutshell, I will build a narrow house on a narrow lot and leave room for future lots to be developed if when sewer is available. The home on a narrow lot will have a septic system because sewer is not available. At the time in the future when sewer is available, I will abandon the septic system, connect to sewers, and have room to subdivide and meet density requirements. The City of Olympia is allowing a new septic system to be placed on another R4-8 parcel just to the north of my parcel. So I don't understand why I would not be able to also add a septic system, which is the concern from environmental health. I talked to Tiffany King from the City of Olympia, and she said they have done the same process. And I am following with another parcel where the septic is added initially with room for future development once sewer is available. Scott and I both have these emails available for review if needed. This is all process I have been trying to follow since meeting with Scott. I know who's Scott.
Scott McCormick,
Scott
Associate
McCormick,
Planner.
okay. In March 2017, based on suggestions that came from the pre-submission conference I paid for. Since then, I have paid for gopher and plant study and the permit request to get the ball rolling based on county recommendations. I would like the opportunity to present myself at future discussions at your request.
But for whatever reason, he wasn't able to come today to present.
Well,
himself. Is that
I don't
right?
know, and again, we received on June 16, I responded to, yeah, he's welcome, and I provided the date in which I was gonna bring this item back to you, which is today. And here we are.
I guess my question would be, do you know anything about the other lot to the north that's being allowed?
I do.
Okay.
In fact, I have, I'll read an email from Tiffany King if that's okay. So Tiffany King is the engineering plans examiner at City of Olympia. This email was received last Thursday, June 24th. She notes the applicant's interpretation that a new home with septic would be approvable is inaccurate. The similar situation I referred to in my previous email to Mr. Walker was the new house built on 13th/Kaiser. The parcel was part of a similar predicament. The short plat was allowed in order to put 2 existing homes onto individual lots with the remaining area set aside for further development. Even though they chose to only build 1 single-family house at this time, sewer and water requirements were upheld, and the homeowner did the required utility extensions. The property owner was also required to place the home in a location that would still allow for additional development at a later date if desired.
So the envelope was designed in a certain spot, so the they would be able to do the rest of it, but it just hasn't been done. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I read, but the key piece to this is that sewer utilities were extended to all the lots. So all the improvements were completed as required. And in the Walker plat alteration, sewer is not available.
Okay, I guess I do have another question. That'd be, the taxes raised by having a new house out there go to the benefit of the county. It's in the unincorporated area, is that right?
It's unincorporated, is, yeah, the
It goes to
taxation.
the county, right? Eventually it'll be in the city, but right now it's in the county.
If you're talking property taxes, we receive the taxes regardless of the jurisdiction.
Yeah, but I mean, the taxes generated there, maybe
Sales
building the house, yeah, sales tax, building the house and,
Yeah, it will apply the same sales tax distribution of any transaction in the unincorporated areas.
so we get the benefit, right?
The majority, because yes.
And
For the
And
construction
even when
materials,
there's
yeah.
8 more houses built, we get the benefit of that as well.
It's still UGA, yes.
It's in the UGA, right?
If it continues to be
Continues to be.
UGA.
But possibly when they put the sewer out, they might do an annexation or something at that point. We
They
don't
do an
know.
annexation at any point in time.
Yeah. So isn't it to our benefit if we allowed that house and 8 later to be built? I mean, the county benefits through taxes raised, is all I'm saying. Whether that's property taxes or sales tax.
We'll have the property taxes regardless of
Anyway,
annexation.
yeah,
Yes,
anyway.
that won't change. The amount of property taxes won't change.
But still, that,
It's annexed, but
that
sales
brings in
tax
money.
would be a one-time benefit to the county for
yeah,
construction
new
on that
new
lot,
construction.
conceivably.
Yeah. Plus the sales tax.
Sales tax would be the one.
Anyway, why wouldn't it be a benefit? But now I see that if the city is saying they're not going to or they can't, it sounds like there's still one of those roadblocks in place that you're talking about, but.
Yeah, it comes down to the same spot. I mean, you know, Mr. Walker has a plan, that meets the density, that is a phased approach that requires the building a new septic system to allow for this narrow home and this narrow lot to be built based on his plan.
Isn't
But the
the,
city of Olympia will not approve that septic system. So it goes back to the same spot as where you are, and that is why they recommended not to approve this
and
alteration.
that's my question, is that a law that they have to approve it, or is it an agreement that we've got that we generally
Joint
follow?
plan is what you said.
It's a joint plan.
The joint plan, but also the sanitary code does require new development to follow the city's wastewater management plan. So that's what our code requires, and certainly there's always an administrative process for an individual who's aggrieved by our decision that they could go through. But again, because it doesn't meet our code, the likelihood of a hearing officer or our staff recommending approval is.
I had a question on your email that you went through, when he mentioned gopher study and wildlife plant or whatever, I mean, if he did a pre-submission conference on his project and he knew this was an obstacle, why would he be out doing gopher and other kinds of studies?
I think it's for the overall, for the rest of the, because I think he's talking about the overall plat, not just this particular track.
I haven't researched that part of it, so honestly, I don't know when the gopher study and the prairie study took place.
Because that's a good question. He wouldn't be able to have to do a gopher study on track A because no applications have been received. Because he's not allowed to submit an application at this point.
Were the houses on lots 1 and 2 pre-existing though?
Right, so I don't know what
So
it,
why would he have done a gopher review?
I would assume that probably something, he had intent to do something at that point.
Well, and I don't know that I can answer that question either, but if he was interested in subdividing tract A and or building a single family home, it's my understanding that he'd be required to go through that type of process.
That's correct. Upon prior Upon or prior to application, that is correct. We have not received a subdivision application, so I don't know if, I can't speak if the scope for prior review has been submitted and or approved by the county.
So maybe he was being optimistic about this piece of it and seeing if he had other obstacles, like a gopher
It's
issue.
quite possible, yeah.
I didn't know they had gopher issues over on Kaiser Road, to be honest with you.
This is actually a Boulevard Road extension.
Well,
The example of
where did
13th.
Kaiser Road come in?
The example that the city of Olympia noted.
Oh, okay, okay,
But
good
it
enough.
is worth noting.
Just to the north?
It is worth noting that once we received Olympia's comments, I immediately reached out to the project planner, Scott McCormick, to let him know he may want to check with the applicant on does he want this review to continue, because based on Olympia's comments, we would be recommending denial. And, you know, without investing the time to complete the review, but the applicant did choose to proceed.
Okay, well, what's the board's pleasure at this juncture?
I'm inclined to support him and force the city into doing something maybe or something, I don't know. I think the goal of growth management is to consolidate the population in a more dense area, and as long as he's willing to do that, what's it hurt? We're gonna have one house there now and 8 later. So I know I run afoul oftentimes of bureaucratic process, but it looks to me like he'd still have, I don't know if I'd call it insurmountable blockage there as being able to move forward, but maybe he can employ a few lawyers and get some litigation going.
I'm inclined to have a public hearing, just to give that opportunity to Mr. Walker to come and speak, and say his piece on this matter. I don't know, you know, what option, if any, we would really have if he's got that roadblock with the city. But I would like to give him the opportunity to come forth and speak and, you know, say what he needs to say.
So clarification on your comment, Commissioner. A public hearing, or you
Yeah.
like to formally invite him to come next Tuesday morning?
I was going with the option 3, the request of public hearing one on the, because one is BoCC approved the requested alterations, BoCC denied the requested plat alterations, and option 3 is request a public hearing.
No, hearing, that's what I tried to clarify, what his suggestion is, going to public hearing or ask Mr. Walker to come next Tuesday morning to address the board.
I don't know, just for the process to be clear, I think going with a public hearing, that way he can come and speak.
And could we consolidate that public hearing on a day that we're having a public hearing? This will just be one of the issues that we'll have on that particular day.
Well, then, if the board would like to have a public hearing on this, then we need to bring an AIS for you to set the public hearing. And then we'll determine the date in which the public hearing will be, which will be 20 days at least. Because that's what I'm trying to find, because it's, a formal public hearing is procedural. We need to announce to enough time, so it's procedural versus asking for him to come and address the board at the next agenda setting. So that's what I'm
I
trying to
would
clarify.
prefer to
what's
do
the
that.
process.
He can listen to this morning's, see if his question, if he feels there's additional piece of information that hasn't been vetted this morning, we'll give him that opportunity on the 6th. Is that,
Yeah.
and then we can decide next week.
So I'll move this item to July 6th. And I will reach out to Mr. Walker to make sure that he's available.
And make sure that he's keyed in to listen this morning. He may listen and decide it's not.
Maybe he's got nowhere to go or something.
Yeah, or his, since we went through his email, but if he wants to add information, we can go there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you, Greg. All right, that gives us up to Commissioner items number 9.1, American Rescue Plan Funds Phase 1 follow-up discussion.
Could I suggest Commissioners item 2 and 3? They'll have a time sensitive, I can probably bring this item to next Tuesday so you don't feel pressure on the first item.
That's, okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so I'll bring those for July 6th.
It's 11:51 and we've got, we'll just take up item 1 until we get where we need to go. And we can adjourn.
I have two Steve Bramwells on the screen back here. So, Commissioners, this is a follow-up to the agenda setting item of last week, where my suggestion for you to consider what I call a Phase 1 of the American Rescue Plan. Phase 1 is for the 2021 allocation of $28 million. Early in the year, I provided to you a recommendation as to how those will be allocated. The guidance of the Treasury changed, and June 8th was still getting through the process as to what will be the right investment that you may consider. What has not changed, at least from my perspective, and guidance is to continue to support businesses who have been impacted by the pandemic, as well as the nonprofits who have been affected by the pandemic. So my proposal to you last week is for you to consider a $10 million allocation to Thurston Strong, and also $1.5 million to United Way. To run you through briefly, the proposal for Thurston Strong, and this is included on this page, is for a jobs program of $1.3 million to business relaunch.
Romero, can I stop you? So I've got one dated 6/17. This one's dated 6/29. Has it been revised?
Yes, it's a revised.
Okay, so we need to
We gave
change.
you a revised report this morning. We were working with Jenica even as the last minute yesterday.
All right.
To the business relaunch, $2.2 million, a minority enterprise investment for 3.3. There's an investment on the agricultural market reset for 2.1. Tourism, recreation, recovery for 100,000. Vaccine incentives for 100,000. Nonprofits grants for 900,000, and that will equate to $10 million. On the report that we have in front of you, has a total allocation of 13.1 on the same elements, and that includes other contributions Thurston Strong has related to that.
What were the changes? I don't have my previous one.
We worked through, I can maybe Jenica can work through the changes, but fundamentally it hasn't changed much. It was a different allocation on the agriculture, I believe. So, and then the United Way includes a little more in detail what is presented to you last week. That includes investments on shelter and other basic needs, senior nutrition support programs, food bank, and other nutrition basic needs, and youth support, and that equates.
Which one was that on the senior, right here?
You have that? Yeah, right here. That's United Way. So, in the conversation last week was, I believe Commissioner Messer wanted to hear additional information related to the agricultural side of this investment. And I believe Commissioner Mejia wanted to hear more related to the minority enterprise investment as well.
You wanted to hear about United Way.
Yeah, I wanted to hear about United Way.
Yeah. And also United Way as to how the United Way receive some funding through other means, perhaps through the same programs, and how this request aligns to that as well, right? That was, I believe, the request. Those are the three questions that I believe mainly what the board was looking for last week. So on that tone, I'm gonna give the floor to Jenica and perspective, but attached to your packet is this great report related to Thurston Strong as to how the investment the board did last year has helped, but also highlights the need in so many areas of the businesses as well. That's the framework. Jenica, your turn, and go for it.
I know that we have a time constraint, so is there time for me to go through a Thurston Strong presentation, proposed use of funds and need within these areas?
Would you like to move to 12:30, Commissioner?
Okay? Yeah, we've got time.
Okay. Okay, well, good morning, commissioners. This is Jenica Machado, Economic Development Manager. As Romero had mentioned, with last week's request, I touched base with Thurston Strong and United Way to gather additional context to their American Rescue Plan proposals. We also have Stephen Bramwell with WSU online to speak on the ag portion. I can start with Thurston Strong. I know Stephen's juggling some meetings right now. And so in addition to the document that Romero had highlighted with the categories broken down, I have a presentation that provides information regarding the fund use and the need. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. And so basically with this, we want to ask the question, is there still a need for business grants? And so we're going to take a quick look at some economic data. So with this graph, we see that in Washington State, 30% of small businesses remain closed due to COVID. For remaining open small businesses, revenues have started to creep up, but remain 23% below normal. And that's after a whole year of sustaining 35 to 50% below average revenue. And so they're pulling in still a quarter less revenue than they typically had pre-pandemic times. So this graph shows an example slide. It's education and health services small business revenue, which shows a decrease of 36%. This is an example of how certain industries have been particularly hard hit and need a jump start to keep going. And so, for example, we recently learned that there's the Shuttered Venue Grant. They had 18,000 applicants and only 30 venues have received funding nationally. And so we're proposing a bridge grant funding to help them get back to business sooner now that Thurston County will be approaching the 70% vaccinated rate and resulting relaxation on gathering restrictions. The net result of closure and reduced revenue is across the board reduction in employment volumes. And this is at every wage level. And so this shows 20 to 25% below normal wage volumes, in which has been hard for, we've heard, for industries to attract back some of the workers. So here we see that the total spending by all consumers has actually increased by 41% if you're looking at May 2021 to January 2020. And so while local businesses we've seen have a revenue reduction, we're seeing that local consumer spending is soaring above pre-pandemic levels. So what this is telling us is that people's spending habits have changed to move further away from spending at small businesses and are spending more buying online or through larger supercenters. So this chart is looking at national data. We track here in Thurston fairly close to national average on most sectors. And this McKinsey study indicates a long road to recovery and stability for certain sectors. Arts, entertainment, recreation, accommodation, hospitality, food service, personal services, construction trades. Some of these sectors are not going to see, normal for years to come. So for the most part, these are the sectors where small businesses represent more than half of the sector that they make up. These are the types of targeted grant recipients that we will look to support with any Thurston Strong grants. So how does Thurston Strong propose use of funds help? So looking at the minority business support. The minority businesses have been particularly hard hit by the pandemic. They traditionally have a harder time accessing capital. And this was a big problem when the original PPP loans came out, when MIDI did not have relationships with traditional lenders. And so the investment within this would help bridge the gap, expand access to capital, and invest in our minority businesses. All right, so the next couple slides are talking about our agriculture conditions. So I'm going to pass that over to Stephen.
Hello, commissioners. Nice to see everybody here. Thanks for giving us a little opportunity to talk. Very much interested in answering questions you have about ongoing impacts of COVID on ag businesses. There's two different sources of information that I want to just make sure you're aware of.
Stephen, can you introduce yourself, please?
I can. Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Stephen Bramwell. I'm the Washington State University County Director and Agriculture faculty. Nice to be here today. And there are ongoing impacts of COVID-19, and there's two sources of data that I wanted to just bring in front of you. One is a statewide UW, WSU, Washington State Department of Ag survey, and that's the results here. And then since there was such an interest among the commissioners in understanding the impact of COVID in Thurston County, we circulated a small questionnaire and got, in just about 24 hours, 30 responses to document the ongoing impacts to ag businesses in this county. So we tried to turn that around at your request. So a lot of increased costs that's prevailing in the local data as well as statewide data agrees that's the predominant area of impact. There's been a significant interest in looking to relief funds of sourcing to get through 2021, and that's number two. 55% of farms are looking to grants and other financial aid programs to patch in their shortfalls. A lot of farms experience decreased revenue just by, the result of needing to change gears and compensate for lost farmers markets and restaurant accounts. I think these next two I want to draw particular attention to because they focus on the area that our relief and response funding would be directed towards. So a third of farmers statewide were looking to new programs to facilitate new distribution channels. That's a big chunk of farmers. It's not, say, 98%, but to have a full third of farms looking for new distribution channels is very significant. 31% were looking to programs to facilitate farm networks. And so this type of, market access support, as well as direct farm support for increased costs is where the solutions come within this funding proposal. Another really significant issue that's been impacting agriculture are increased labor costs, and we'll have more to say about that. You can go to the next slide, Jenica, if there's that number 2. And so here's the most significant impacts affecting farms, slide number 2. Unforeseen costs, as I mentioned, 79%, 70% unable to adapt to market conditions, 55% closure of direct marketing outlets, 50% unable to pay competitive wages, getting to that labor issue, 48% disruption of distribution systems, and I've mentioned, the impact of that. 46% closure of direct marketing as distinct from indirect marketing channels, actually. This is a little typo. And then 41% difficulty finding workers, again, reflecting that labor shortage. Jenica, do you want me to say anything about the Thurston County situation here or wait?
Sure, now's a good time.
Okay, thanks. This is not much more, but I just want to verify that we were really interested that you had concerns about documenting continuing need. And I didn't just want to come in and give you an opinion. So we went out and found that during the peak of COVID, 83% of farms were experiencing in Thurston County negative impacts of the pandemic on their business. And just over the weekend, we're able to document that 68% of farms responding still had negative impacts of COVID-19 on their business. The number one impact in 91% of farms were experienced this, and this is from, again, this Thurston County data, were increased cost of farm inputs. 2/3 of farms were impacted by reduced availability of indirect market channels, and 64%, so about 2/3 each in direct market channels, so selling to a wholesaler, distributor, or selling to the farmer's market. And then again, equaling that, about 2/3 as well, difficulty acquiring and retaining labor. And just a shade less important at 60%, disruption of distribution systems. So everything that you're seeing in the slides at the statewide level is reflected and maybe even emphasized at the local level. And the continuing impacts are really real. I got some anecdotal information and stories from Kearsarge Farm, Calliope Farm, livestock producers, all talking about supply chain issues and market disruption as being, predominant, and just a lot of stress and a lot of training needs and compliance needs trying to get their workers to wear PPE, during the pandemic, to buy cleaning and sanitation supplies. So I can answer any other questions you might have, and really happy to do so. Thanks for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Stephen. And then I'll just finish up with a few more slides. And so next, taking a quick look at workforce. So currently the number one request coming into the EDC business hotline is help finding workers. Some businesses say business activity is ramping up as hoped, but they can't meet the demand or opportunity due to staffing. We're also hearing from people that either need or want better career opportunities, and some of those, need and require new skill training or certification. And so taking a deeper look at the Thurston Strong proposals. The Thurston Works Jobs Champions Network, the proposed $1.3 million of a $2.2 million program, around 50 workers for 1 year. These would be grants to nonprofits to fund positions within the nonprofit, which is going to help add emergency relief capacity. Pack Mountain would be doing the admin agency over this grant, and Community Foundation would help identify the interested nonprofits. Pack Mountain has a similar program that they're running right now, and so they have the infrastructure in place to execute this. Next, we have the Thurston Business Relaunch Grant, which has a $2.2 million proposed investment from Thurston County. This would be administered by the EDC with an estimated 200 plus grants to small businesses. And like mentioned earlier, these would target the impacted sectors. So looking at shuttered venues, restaurants, hospitality, personal services. And of course, these businesses receiving funds would be vetted and screened to not allow duplicate funding. Next is the minority enterprise investment. And so this again would be administered by the EDC, estimated 270 grants at 10,000 each. And Minority Business Advisory Council would be work to set up, which would provide advice and develop recommendations on strategies and policies, such as positioning minority-owned businesses to compete in the local and national economy, eliminating domestic barriers to growth for the small businesses, and expanding minority-owned business participation in emerging industries. Commissioner Mejia?
Yes, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Sure.
So usually when I hear the minority advisory councils, they usually make me nervous because I've had experience with things where they mean well, but in the end, it just ends up being kind of like just a foothold and not really something that either makes an impact or their voices are not really even heard, or sometimes they're not even made out of minority people in those groups. So, I mean, is there a plan for this? Is there a policy? Is there procedures? Is there anything really in place on what they're looking for and how this is really going to work?
Yeah, so there has been discussion about ensuring that the council is made up of those with lived experience and part of, the population that the Minority Business Advisory Council would be working on. And so I think the next item is also something that makes sure to put some teeth to the council. And so a high-level staff member would be embedded in the EDC to lead minority business engagement and staff the advisory committee. So they would have a paid staff member there to help enact any of the recommendations and actions that the council developed. Does that help address your question?
It addresses the question, not the concerns. Thank you, though.
And so then the last item of that would be funds to help launch a community cultural center, which would provide minority business training and culinary arts. Next, I'll pass this back over to Stephen.
Hello again, commissioners. Thank you, Stephen Bramwell again with Washington State University Extension. So there would be 2.1 million was the request that was put in front of you last Tuesday, I believe. We've added a little bit of information on how that would be allocated. 100,000 or 10,000, sorry, 100 grants for $10,000 would constitute $1 million of that funding. The next item that would be on the table would be the 100,000 for food assistance to serve those in need. Yeah, just stay there for now. This is a smaller piece of an overall $2.1 million package, but it provides for, direct real-time adaptation to the loss of restaurant and farmers market accounts. And it also responds to ongoing food assistance need in the population and an inability or difficulty getting food out, in all cases where it's needed. So that's that second major line of funding, the 100,000 in food assistance. And then the last one is 900. So the food assistance would be to purchase produce from farms and then distribute it to partner organizations in the community. And then a $900,000 labor shortage oriented task, which is focused on figuring out ways for farms to respond to the fact that they can't fill positions. So this can focus on efficiencies on the farm. It can focus on technical training for improving efficiencies and reducing labor costs. And then even bringing in labor where needed and supporting that pipeline to get people in place where they're needed. I had a email from a farmer saying that 2021 is shaping up to be, very difficult to maintain their revenue because they just cannot keep and retain labor, let alone really highly skilled labor. And that, came across in the percentages, and it came across in individual comments as well. So
I have a question there, Steve.
Yeah.
So that all adds up to 2 million. Is there a missing 100,000?
I think the last one, Ty, good eye, was intended to be $1 million and not 900,000.
Okay, and that last piece on labor shortage, can you flesh out for me, how does this solve a problem? I mean, if they can't, it sounds like they're ready and willing to pay workers to do stuff, they just can't find workers. So how is us giving money to somebody gonna create people? They're gonna pay them more so that they can attract them, or how does it work?
There's a couple different ways. Farm labor is in terms of the wage rate is really challenging. And everybody with low wage positions is having a hard time filling them right now. So that's one strategy where you could somehow augment wage rates to make it more attractive. Another strategy is to decrease the overall need for labor through people being able to get a hold of equipment that reduces labor costs. I know that on the last round of business grants, one farm purchased a plastic mulch and drip tape laying device. It costs about $6,000. You attach it to a tractor, and it lays down drip tape, it lays down plastic mulch, and it buries the edges all in one pass. And what might otherwise be done with a couple people, laying it out manually and kneeing it in, or something of that nature. So there are equipment acquisitions that, whether they're owned by farmers and they apply to purchase them, or they're owned by an entity that then turns around and rents them, are all ways that you'd be able to decrease the cost of the operation. And, that's typically, these are, a lot of our farms are smaller farms. They're not that well capitalized. Making capital investments is difficult in good times. So it's particularly difficult now. There's other questions I have myself around structuring this program, and one of the pieces of information we want to convey was that this part of it needs more opportunity to flesh out. So we responded to, I think, your concerns that this was a lot of money to allocate. So we wanted to allocate the first two pieces more deliberately and say, look, these are ready now, grants for farms at 10,000 for $1 million, and food purchasing assistance that gets food to where it's needed. That's really clear. But the broader tackling of structural issues is something that I think we know that labor is the challenge, and yet we need time to figure out how that program would be structured.
Jenica, do you know, maybe looking at the first $1 million of grants, $10,000 grants, are agricultural businesses not able to access other grant programs like any other business?
I'm sorry, do you mean in terms of Thurston Strong grants?
Yeah, I mean, we're having a special we're laying out 270 grants for minority enterprises and 200 grants for business relaunch. There was other stuff in the last set of programming. I'm just wondering, what, do we need to carve out this business aid program for ag businesses when they're a business and there's broader programs, just to make sure we're not duplicating programs?
One data point, go ahead, Janet.
Go ahead, Stephen, it's fine.
Well, I'll just mention it's quick and then Janet can jump in. That there's a higher rate of loan and grant application failure rates for smaller businesses under $250,000 a year in the ag realm. So there is that, general higher level of failure.
I have a question in regards, so while I was out for the ag grants, one of the things I heard was the help towards farmers markets. I know Olympia Farmers Market was really interested in, was this going to be passing through? But I don't see how that specifically would fit into this and how we could, support these farmers markets where farmers can go and sell their produce. Could you expand on that, Stephen?
One thing we did with the last round of ag grants is create a few buckets, and we carved out funding to allocate towards farmers markets and also food cooperatives that purchase locally. That could be either done with the 1 million, or you could add, another small bit of money from that last item into this one to directly allocate for that. I will say that helped and was essential to the Tumwater Farmers Market opening this year at all. I heard that from the market manager, that the grant they received last time around made the difference between an email that said we're not opening and we are.
Commissioner,
so I think that's a good point, Commissioner Mejia.
Thank you.
Stephen?
Yes, sir.
You made mention of that mat laying down. I mean, aren't a lot of these folks trying to do organic farming, if you will, and by having that, I'll just use that one example, by being able to lay that mat down, they don't have to find as many people that are out there actually using a hoe, because they're not going to use herbicides and pesticides and stuff. So they lay those mats down to keep the weeds down, and that in turn takes less man hours to accomplish the same thing, right?
That's true. And different farms would have different needs to save labor on. I know another farm that uses a piece of equipment that peels and essentially puts garlic in the form that you'd recognize it at the grocery store. It takes off the outer husks, cuts the roots, and cuts the tip, and you just feed it through. And those things can take a lot of time if somebody's sitting there with the scissors, and that's really expensive.
And even, say another example would be like a spring-tooth harrow, where they'll actually remove a couple of those so that they don't damage the crop. And then in between the rows, that's in lieu of somebody going through there with a hoe, for an example. And so that might be something they'd want to buy to be able to accomplish keeping the weeds down. So, I don't know, I mean, I'm just trying to help my non-farmer seatmates understand maybe the needs.
I think I see Commissioner Mejia's hand again.
Yeah, just kind of like a follow-up of what you said. I understand the need for new machinery, especially with the labor shortage. I'm not arguing that, but I am concerned is, you said, for an entity, to help an entity buy this machinery so they can then rent it out to farmers. And then that kind of just like raised a little flag for me, because again, it's like, are they going to be making this huge profit out of renting out to farmers, and then farmers are still going to be in that kind of foothold of, is it easier to rent or to get the labor for this? So that for me is like, okay, well, how are we going to make sure that this entity that rents out to the farmers is not completely just overcharging? They get, the funding for them to buy the machinery, but then they're completely overcharging the farmers. Like, how is that even going to be managed or guidelines set for that not to happen?
Some equipment's not good to rent, so you know, because it's all needed at the same time. But among that equipment that is needed to rent and that works that way is you could consider working with the conservation district and maintain an equipment library and have the insurance and the forms and processes in place. So that would probably be, I probably wouldn't go with anybody else. That'd be my recommendation. That's what I'm most familiar with, and they're in that business. So
Okay.
that's a good.
Yeah. Okay,
pro.
no, thank you for that. Yeah, that makes sense.
I would just note, as this discussion is evolving, we would ensure that we're continuing to work within the guidelines of the ARP funds and what is an eligible use.
Good answer, Jennifer.
Yes.
That's
what I was looking for.
I would just like to say that just because it might help guide Steve, because Steve and I were going to touch base at the end of last week and we didn't get a chance to do that. So just making sure your comment, you understand where I was coming from in my questions last week. You know, we were being asked to allocate $2.1 million and we were given 4 words to describe that allocation. 4 words on this form. And I would just remind, and my seatmates may remember that on 4 separate occasions, at least me personally, the mayor of Lacey has asked, implored, and I think sent us a formal letter of request, imploring us to take a deep breath when we look at the allocation of this funding, consider what might be able to be accomplished in our 5-year homeless response plan. And then there was some communication this past week beating me up for daring to suggest that maybe we should listen to the mayor of Lacey's request, take that deep breath, question whether or not 4 words is enough to justify the expenditure of $2.1 million when we have an absolute explosion of you know, a housing problem in this community. So I'm just trying to ask those questions. I don't really need a description of the need, because I think the need is across the whole community. What I was curious about is, what was this program designed to do? Because I got emails saying, oh, well, that much money, it must be about the ag park. Well, it's not about the ag park, apparently. It must be about, you know, labor shortage. It must be about what Commissioner Mejia was just talking about. It could be any number of things, and we had no information about that. So pardon me for asking some questions about what $2.1 million was going for, because I made the point, there was no Thurston Strong proposal to allocate any money to agricultural sector last time. I believe the board came up with that idea because we had some additional funding. And we just said, let's come up with $750,000. And then Jenica came and said, every applicant that applied for that $750,000 was granted. There were, you know, so I just needed to hear more about what this $2.1 million was designed to do. And I understand that it's going to do good things. I had no doubt about that. It was just, I have to weigh that against all the other things that money could possibly do and what our other jurisdictions are trying to muster regional support to do, and all the other plans and priorities that could go. So I just want to make those comments clear, because there's a lot of hand-wringing, and after I just asked them what I thought were really simple, basic questions that anyone would want their county commissioner to ask, but people were saying, I don't have any commitment to agriculture. That infuriated me, because let me just remind the public that when the Agricultural Advisory Committee sent an impassioned letter last year asking us to not co-designate mineral land of agricultural land and mineral land expansion, there was only one commissioner that supported their request, and that was me. So, and I believe that I've supported just about every single agriculturally related item that's come before me in my 2.5 years as commissioner. So I just want to lay all that out, because that really bothered me that someone would suggest that by asking some simple questions, I have no commitment to agriculture in this county. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox there. Commissioner Mejia?
Well, I was just going to touch on that City of Lacey letter because it was a big discussion topic at the RHC, but we can leave it for some time later. That way I don't get on my soapbox.
You know, and just to relate to this is great conversation, and I appreciate your perspective, Commissioner Minster. Because I do, my humble perspective, I do agree, you were just asking questions. And I think we as a staff, we are required to bring that information to you in order for you to make an informed decision. So related to this particular, the 2.1 million allocation to the agriculture market, you know, you have the options to say, yes, perhaps support the 2.1 or split, because between the 100,000 and 100,000, I hear some questions related to still more additional information that I'd like to hear related to the labor shortage or buying equipment, how that's gonna work, how the rental is gonna work. Are the farmers who are gonna be renting those equipments are gonna be facing yet another uphill battle to rent those equipments if they don't have it, considering they're already suffering some from the pandemic. You know, you may consider just setting aside $1 million and for you to have additional information for the additional 1.1. So I just want to lay it out to you that you do have options. This is just a staff's proposal. Please don't take this as you have to, you know, give your stamp of approval and everything. This is just a proposal. Going back to, for me last week, and you asked the sense of urgency. For me, I come up with the sense of urgency of getting the money to the businesses who are in need. That is the only sense of urgency that I have before you, commissioners. Because as you hear, there is a lot of need still for the businesses and all the aspects that you heard today. And that is the sense of urgency that I have, is just making sure that we put the money on those individuals who are currently in need.
Commissioner Edwards has his hand up.
I guess I would just like to emphasize that, like the Thurston Conservation District, I don't even think they rent things to, I think you sign up for it. They get that equipment, and then as soon as it's used in this location, then it goes to the next location.
You become a letter for that.
Okay. Well, anyway, I don't look at rental of equipment as being much of an issue on this whole ag thing, because I think Stephen did make real quick mention of it, that when it's needed everywhere, kind of. But, so you wouldn't want to rent it for a week or something. But the Conservation District has a pretty good handle on making sure it goes here and it gets used, and then it goes over here and gets used for those that wouldn't purchase it. But those that are going to purchase it, it's going to become a long-term fix for lack of labor to use hand tools, for an example. Did I see Stephen up there? Did he have his hand up too?
Can I say something real quick?
Okay.
Commissioner Mejia, and then we'll go to Steve.
You know, I would like to see just a little bit, maybe from that 1 million for the labor shortage issues, if it's 200,000, just to support, because it's also, I see it on the conservation district, you know, the co-ops and the food hubs and, you know, farmers market. If there's, you know, just a little bit that we can support, you know, those places, that would be great too. And I'm not sure, you know, what the need is there, but it would be great to support them as well. Stephen, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. Good comments from everybody, and Commissioner Edwards, Menser, and Mejia, thank you. And Commissioner Menser, certainly, I know you do support agriculture, and I hope that didn't sting too much to hear those comments. I think we all feel really good to have these three commissioners here supporting agriculture. One option, like the county manager mentions, and we had suggested in our discussions earlier coming into this, is that maybe holding that 900,000, or as it were, a million separate to be worked on further, but put it in reserve so we can bring more information back about that, how it would be structured. Because I only had a very few days to reach out to growers in the last week to start inquiring what their top needs are and how this could be structured. And I have questions around how that could best work as well. And, you know, the nice thing about that grants is that those allow for the farms to identify the best use and to tackle the problems they're facing. But that last one needs more input, I think, from agriculture to structure it. I think we have got some good, we know some of the key issues are and how to direct it, but that would be something you could consider, is giving more time for that last one. And then to that last point that Commissioner Mejia mentioned about the Conservation District and co-ops, in specific farm cooperatives in the Southwest Washington Food Hub, that cooperative would be the primary conduit to direct funding out to purchase produce from farms and then direct it to organizations in need. And so they're integral. Joining the cooperative is very inexpensive, and that would provide any farmer who wants to work with the cooperative to get that direct assistance and to help replace a lost restaurant account or a lost farmer's market account. And that gets to those two pieces I tried to draw your attention to, that a full third of farms are looking for new distribution channels and new partnerships among farms to try to reach their markets and replace markets they've lost. And so I think that second one, while it's small at $100,000 in food assistance, that makes a huge direct impact. So I'm particularly interested in that because it really goes straight to the opportunity to compensate for what's been lost in this last year. And then the grants just allow for that individual selection opportunity for farms to apply funding where it's needed, so far if it's within the bounds of the ARP stipulations.
Steve, Jenica, I think, reported that the last grant round was like 71 grants or something like that, Jenica? Or 69?
Yeah, it's 60 to 70. And Stephen and I had discussed that, and that some limitations, including time, that we had to move that money out, that there could be deeper outreach. And I believe Stephen will be able to comment on having heard from farms after the grant cycle. And so it seems like there was some pretty high confidence that there would be additional farms that would be interested and eligible for the funds.
It happened fast last fall, and farms aren't always checking their emails at the same frequency that we do, and some not at all. And so there's a big need for more of a telephone chain and outreach effort. There's people that were overlooked and didn't get contacted and didn't know about it, and we have more partners who would have more time with a lot longer program to work on that more effectively, and new people who want to help.
Okay. Just
are there any
finish Jenica and the rest, and then engage the board.
Sorry, we got hung up there on the ag slide. Keep going, Jenica.
Okay, the next 100,000 for entertainment recovery promotion, administered by the BCB for a robust marketing campaign targeting visitors and helping the arts entertainment sector. Next would be the Thurston nonprofit grants. And so the 900,000, which the grants would be administered on a sliding scale, but it could be up to 80 grants at 10,000 each. And this is targeting the nonprofits that have fallen through the cracks for other funding sources. And so it would not be duplicative funding, and this grant would be administered by the Community Foundation. Last would be vaccine incentives. We're currently discussing this item with Public Health and Social Services, but these funds could be used to provide incentives for vaccinating and purchasing gift cards or goods from local businesses. We're currently discussing mobile vaccination efforts and pairing the incentives with those. And so the last slide was just to kind of highlight what would the ROI in our community be from this investment. And so these figures were, input into the in-plan input-output model so that we could see what the ripple effect in our community would be. And so a 10 million investment would yield 15.5 million through a multiplier effect, create 136 jobs, both direct and indirect, and it would create 1.6 million in new tax revenue across jurisdictions. And so that is the completion of that long presentation. Thank you for bearing with me. And if there are no additional items on the Thurston Strong proposal, I could jump into United Way, as I know we're pressed for time.
Ready for United Way?
I guess so. I'm a little concerned about the vaccine incentives and what that would entail. I don't know what we're going to end up with as far as. I don't want to be buying people bubble gum to go get a shot. So.
Well, that's what is an incentive.
I know.
That's what we're looking at, and we're looking at to see how because other jurisdictions have practiced and utilized this strategy. And there's small vaccination clinics where, literally we can buy a gift card If you get vaccinated, we'll give you a gift card.
What I
That's
don't
the
like about
intent
the
of it.
vaccination incentive is that, what about all those responsible citizens that went out and did their thing? And then, I don't know, I'm just not crazy about that unless we include somehow everybody. If you wanna buy everybody a lottery ticket, that doesn't even make sense to me, but.
We will not be able to do that.
I would like to hear more about that before we make any expenditures is all.
Okay. I can move on to United Way proposal if everybody's ready.
Go ahead.
So United Way has provided an updated breakdown of the use of funds within the categories of shelter and other basic needs, senior nutrition and support programs, food bank and other nutrition basic need programs, and youth support. The intent of the grants will be to ensure that the critical programs in basic need and youth supports are resourced through the end of the calendar year. Last week, there were some questions regarding need and how these funds may be different from other recently approved funds. United Way did provide some additional context when I connected with them. So United Way has insight into the other funding of all of the programs receiving these grants. So they're aware if CDBG money is provided, if they're receiving RHC funds or other federal, state, or local funds or foundation grants. And so they would ensure that no one would receive funds that would create a surplus for the program or that would duplicate other funds that they're receiving. And so United Way highlighted that an allocation of $1.5 million from the county's ARP funds does not close all of the gaps for these organizations. And so for those gaps, United Way can use other money raised for COVID response and recovery, as well as some emergency food and shelter money coming from Department of Homeland. Additionally, United Way noted that these agencies are experiencing overwhelming challenges as they continue to provide services that are very high in demand at a time when their funding has decreased from individuals, fundraisers, corporations, and foundations. And so at the same time, the cost for delivering these services has increased significantly for reasons including supply chain disruptions, rising costs of goods. And so many of these sources of funds also restrict use for very specific elements and programs. And so although they may have received RHC funds for something very specific, they're still seeing gaps in other areas of their operations. And so they still need some additional funds to shore up those needs. So United Way had mentioned that several agencies have had to tap their financial reserves to keep operating and meeting demand. And so without additional support, some of the agencies are faced with the prospect of reducing or eliminating programs and services, and some may have to close facilities or lay off staff in the coming months. Are there any questions regarding the need and use of the United Way funds?
I have to soak this in before I'm fully comfortable with it, Jenica.
Okay.
So I have a proposal for the board. If you feel comfortable, I can probably go through the Thurston Strong based on the conversations and the comments that I've heard. I can go line item by line item and hear your perspective based on their proposal. And I have some comments along the way based on what I've heard. And go that way, or you like to just approve as a plan as a whole? And we'll talk about the United Way next. Will that feel comfortable?
I think it'd be better if you just did what you said first, line by line, add your comments, let the board weigh in, and let chips fall where they may.
So the first allocation on the Thurston Strong plan is the Thurston Works Job Program for $1.3 million. I didn't hear any concerns from the board, but I would like to hear your direction on that.
And that was revised up from 1.2.
Right.
Jenica, do you have an explanation for that?
Yes, there was another area that through working with our internal staff in the county decided was not an eligible use of funds for $100,000. And so those were directed toward under that program. In addition, as other jurisdictions have not approved funds, that this helps close a gap.
Okay. So you want our thumbs on each piece?
Yeah.
Supporting 1.3 for jobs program.
That's fine.
So 3-0, thank you. Next is the Thurston Business Relaunch, and those are specific grants to businesses.
Good. 1, 2,
Oh, yeah.
the third item there.
Yeah.
Business relaunch.
Minority enterprise investment for $3.3 million. And this is the some of the sidelines that I'd like to provide for the board to consider. Listening to Commissioner Mejia's concerns, that perhaps before this council is established, for Thurston Strong to come back to give you a perspective on the makeup on those applicants, for the board to provide a perspective, and as well as to, before the council is put in place, to hear about the roles and responsibilities of the council. Will that work?
Yes, yes. And my concerns with this is I would like to see the guidelines and, you know, there's always a fear when making up these councils that they're just gonna be a token council, and I would want to see that, you know, that's not the purpose of this.
Understood. So what is the direction based on the suggestion that I provided?
I'm good.
So move forward with 3.3, but before the council is established, Jenica to come back with additional information to the board for them to provide a perspective on the makeup of the council, as well as the objectives of the council. Okay. Next is the agriculture market reset, was $2.1 million. I'd like to provide a proposal for you to consider. Consider $1 million in the specific grants, 1.1 based on the proposal that you have, and maybe set aside $1 million for the staff to come back with additional information related to I believe is the labor shortage, as well as how we can help co-ops and farmers markets.
I guess I'm kind of curious if there's an immediate need. Stephen was rushed into this. And do we need to set aside the full million, or should we put 250,000 towards now and 750 kind of hold back until Stephen gets back in touch with us, but earmarked, but then he could have more specifics. And I don't know if Stephen's even listening or not, but.
Sounds like we're proposing $1 million for now in grants.
1.1.
But as to that
1.1, but this is just out of that, it said 900,000, but really it said 1 million. That Stephen said it was 1 million. And I'm saying they put that in there for a reason. Would 250,000 maybe get it started and the 750 hold back until Stephen could get back in touch with us?
Didn't sound like they even knew what they'd do with some of the money yet.
They said they're still discussing it, so I think we can earmark that 1 million for them, right? It's just once they
And then-
finalize
okay,
the conversation on.
I
what they
just thought
want.
maybe they had something right now, renting some, or buying some equipment for the conservation district.
I think they were still
lease
looking
out.
into that.
Okay,
Right, so my suggestion, thank you, was for you to consider 1.1 million directly to grants.
right
Because I
now.
believe the grants are needed.
Well,
And
he had 100,000 for the food assistance, 1 million for grants.
Right.
That was the proposal.
I know, I'm trying to form global numbers, if I may.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that Steve said that was the most important part, was the direct food assistance piece, that 100,000,
Right.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So $1 million in grants and 100,000 for the food assistance. Is that what I'm hearing? Is setting aside $1 million?
And then setting aside the million future.
For, until we get additional
I hope it's
information.
pretty quick in the future, like soon, if it's needed.
Yeah, once they have something finalized or.
My personal inclination would be to just double the amount we did last time, since all applicants were, and do $750,000, not $1 million. But if the board wants to do $1 million, I could probably live with that. Given that we're setting aside that $1 million for further exploration, but I'm not committing to necessarily allocating that to that source unless there's some really good proposals brought forth. So I could compromise there. I would prefer to go $750 on grants, $100,000 on food assistance, set aside $1 million to discuss, and then $250,000 would be allocated somewhere else.
So that's a different proposal from the board.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to keep it just where it is and do the 100 and the million and to do the set aside as Commissioner Mejia pointed out. That's kind of where I'm in.
For now, yeah, I would feel inclined to just do that because I feel if the money's not used, if let's say there's only 70, it's coming back to us regardless, and at that point it can be allocated somewhere else. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Yes, no?
What kind of a time frame? I mean, we really haven't talked about the time frame to spend the money.
Well,
That's still to be determined.
still to be determined, considering that, at least from our perspective, the obligation time is December 2024.
Exactly, we've got time to
And
spend.
we have time, and also, there is gonna take some time to negotiate the sub-recipient agreements based on the new criteria of Treasury.
Right.
So what you're doing today is just setting, a parameters of commitment, but there's gonna be a lot of more work that has to come.
Kind of like the solid waste contract.
So for me, that's what the sense of urgency is, at least from my point of view, because there needs to be a lot of more work we need to do before we can start putting this money in front of those who need it.
But what Commissioner Mejia said, and I guess I appreciate the comment, is that if we don't get more than 70 applicants for the grants, the money doesn't vaporize into
No,
the
it comes
That's exactly
agricultural
right.
netherworld.
We have it in the bank.
It's
It's
there.
sitting in the bank
Just won't
right
go to
now.
those
Yeah.
applicants.
So my last comment on this overall allocation was going to be for you to set the parameters. If for any reason the allocations you have set out or approved on this plan, for any reason they don't meet that threshold, they need to come back to the board.
Right.
And that applies to every single item.
And we'll have regular check-ins. I attended the webinar last week on the new reporting requirements on this money. They are extensive, and we will be reporting quarterly on what we've achieved under each of these. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to say how much I appreciate the work that's gone into the Thurston Strong proposal, because part of the reporting requirements are that you be able to show the economic need. It's here. We have to be able to show a connection to the community. It's here. We have to have specific outcome measures for each of the programs that we provide. It's here. I was pretty anxious last week at the end of that webinar, but I'm feeling greatly relieved to see all the work that's been done. And I think that this will serve you well in the long term, but you'll know if the money's not being used because we'll be gathering this information every quarter.
Okay. So I think we're okay on that.
Okay, just to conclude then, it's unanimous, the board will at this point support $1 million in grants and $100,000 for food assistance. And set aside $1 million. Thank you. Next item is the investment in tourism recovery for $100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't see a thing here.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm just looking for.
Yeah, I'm good.
The next item is vaccine incentives for $100,000.
I still question that.
I was gonna support Commissioner Edwards if it was about just promos and gift cards and stuff, but what I'm seeing on this list is that it's also supporting mobile clinics.
Yeah, but don't we already have mobile clinics that are going out and are funded?
That's what I thought too.
No, it will be to support, but they will not be funding mobile clinics. It will be part of the mobile clinics. They will already have a schedule as an example.
At the mobile clinic,
Yeah,
because it's listing out here, first mobile clinic downtown Ole Summerfest.
Yeah, Shelley, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
I believe we already have a schedule with or without an incentive, this mobile clinic downtown Ole Summerfest, right?
Yes, correct.
That's with or without an incentive.
Tell us how the bubble gum's gonna help us, Shelley. Make the case.
No bubble gum, but there are many communities and events that have found success in using incentives to encourage people to get vaccinated. So just one example of a type of vaccine incentive that has been found effective that we have not been able to implement is offering food at events. So we recently had an event in partnership with Cielo serving the Latino population. And one of the suggestions was to provide a food truck to encourage people to get there and to feed families while they were there. This would be a benefit to both the recipients of the vaccines and encourage them to come, as well as the vendor. We do not currently have a funding source that allows us to do things like that are creative ways that can help us to encourage particularly underserved populations in getting vaccinated. So incentives, having a source of funds for businesses to be able to offer incentives and partner with us, we believe would help to improve our vaccination rates in Thurston County.
So the reason it's part of the Thurston Strong proposal is because of the benefit to the business from purchasing these incentives from them.
Okay, makes a little bit more sense
Well,
now.
because it could be a gift card to a restaurant downtown Olympia.
Right.
And that's how we.
Yeah, no Amazon gift cards.
No.
Right, a small local business.
The
That's
charts are
exactly
showing us
the
people
plan.
aren't shopping at.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a more comfortable with
Thank you.
this idea now.
As long as it's not bubble gum.
No bubble gum.
And the last on the Thurston Strong proposal is the nonprofit grants at 900,000, and that will be, yeah.
Sound good?
Good. You got it, Jenica, for Thurston Strong?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, please.
You got it on the Thurston Strong allocations based on the board decision? Or I can connect with you.
Yeah,
later.
nonprofits was.
I'll walk you through later on each of the items just to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, thank you very much.
So the next is the United Way. What is the pleasure of the board? Can go item by item or as an overall related to their proposal?
I'm back in the whole proposal, so.
I'm good with it.
I would like more information on this. I'll talk to you later on this.
Did I count?
2-0.
2-0.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So,
fine.
2 to 1.
2-1, yes.
Yeah, 2 to 1 to support the United Way proposal as is. I'll connect with you later, Jenica. I think the connection is a little bit off.
Okay, thank you.
Tell me this, are we in a hurry to do this? Is there any reason Commissioner Mejia can't get comfortable with this?
I would just explain my sense of urgency earlier. I mean, the board can.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what's the time frame that we're really up against with making this decision? I don't know how much time she needs to go over this.
We have a check-in this week. I can do the United Way next week. There's no rush.
That's fine.
Is there, yeah, I'm fine with
Let's
that.
recheck in on Tuesday.
Yep, okay,
On
so,
United Way.
so we'll cancel, I'll bring the United Way for next week. Thank you.
And that's it for today, right?
Yep.
All right, agenda setting work session adjourned.
But we'll be back in an hour.
Yep.